Upon entering a cultivation novel game, I became an NPC in the starter village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 Desert City. Seeing that the master did not mention the embarrassing thing just now, but only thought about eating and drinking, Shen-san secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I heard before that people in ancient times were conservative. Once they were met by a man outside, they had to marry that man. He was just thinking about how embarrassing it would be if the master said that he wanted to marry him. He has always respected the master as an elder. How could he marry the master? Even in the game, he felt very embarrassed. Now it seems that the master has no intention of asking him to marry her. This is good. He gradually relaxed and smiled again. He imitated the master's appearance, carefully cut a cactus, and slowly bit it. The oasis not only has a large lake, but also a lot of plants growing around it. The cactus alone is enough for them to eat for many days. The master and apprentice relaxed immediately. The fatigue of the long journey in the desert seemed to disappear completely at this moment. Let's rest here for a few days before leaving. She was more worried about Shen-san's condition than herself. She had a cloak, so she wouldn't get dehydrated, but Shen-san refused to take turns wearing the cloak with her and insisted on giving it to her. Shen-san said he would listen to her. The master and apprentice set up the shed and began to rest. Just 2 days ago, Yunxi's protective shield had been upgraded to the master level. After it was turned on, it could be kept for most of the day, so they didn't need anyone to guard it anymore. The night deepened. Suddenly, there was a sound of flapping wings. Yunxi half opened her eyes, saw that the protective shield in front of her was still good, and closed her eyes again. But the next second, bang bang bang, a deafening sound came from the sky. She suddenly turned over and sat up, climbed out of the shed, and looked at the sky with a confused face. I saw a pigeon with a big trumpet on its back flying in the sky. Shen-san, you have been missing for several months. Are you busy picking up girls? Even if you are busy picking up girls, come to me first to help. I am really in a hurry here, your dear little brother. After listening to this, Yunxi looked at Shen-san in surprise. His face turned blue and purple, and his expression looked very ugly. In order to avoid her apprentice's social death on the spot, she silently retreated back to the shed and pretended not to hear the words of the loudspeaker. The next day, Shen-san didn't know who he was messaging with, and he had been messaging for a whole day. The carrier pigeons flew back and forth in the sky, and she kept swallowing her saliva. If the carrier pigeons were not protected by the system, she would have sent them to be roasted long ago. This carrier pigeon seemed to recognize her. Every time it saw her, it would hide far away and stay beside Shen-san, refusing to get close to her at all. When Yunxi was staring at the carrier pigeon behind Shen-san, she suddenly heard his distressed question. Master, do you know where to buy antidotes? Antidote? She pulled her eyes back and flipped through her space. What kind of poison was it, this? I don't know much either, let me ask. Shen-san frowned and began to write on the letter paper. However, Yunxi quickly found the universal antidote pill she had prepared before and threw a bottle to him. No need to ask. This is a pill that can cure all poisons, take it. When Shen-san received the bottle of medicine, he was surprised for a moment. The master is really awesome. It's not that his partners haven't learned from him before, but none of them can be like her master, who knows everything about astronomy and geography, and even fights so well. He dares to say that in the entire ancient game, no NPC knows more than his master. Thank you, master. He packed the medicine bottle directly, put it in the package, and handed it to the carrier pigeon. That night, when the two were on their way, a carrier pigeon with a horn on its back flew over. Third brother, my good brother, thank you so much. By the way, is your best master in the world still willing to accept disciples? Anyway, my previous master-disciple mission has not been completely completed, so it's okay to give up now. Don't worry, after becoming my disciple, I will definitely respect my teacher and respect you as my senior brother. I will do all the hard work in the future. My good brother, is that okay? I also want to have such a gentle and kind fairy master. Shen-san listened to the sound of the horn that kept echoing, and his face turned black. Yunxi was stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. Master, Shen-san gritted his teeth. Don't listen to my brother's nonsense, he's a bad boy. Haha, your brother is very cute. She laughed so hard that she couldn't stand steadily. I didn't expect that she was so popular among the NPC masters. Shen-san looked at his master laughing helplessly, but he was relieved. This time he won't settle accounts with his younger brother, at least he did a good thing. Master hadn't been so happy since he came to the desert. Master, is there anyone ahead? So many people, like a town. Shen-san frowned. Is it a mirage? After Yunxi explored, he shook his head affirmatively. No, it is indeed a city. The two looked at each other and slowly walked towards the city. It is called a city, but there is no wall outside. It is unclear how many people are in the house, but there are only 20 to 30 people walking outside. After looking for a while, Yunxi frowned, pulled up the hood of her cloak, and said in a low voice, Shen-san, let's go. Shen-san was puzzled, but he still listened to her and walked back. However, before the two walked far, they were stopped. Two guests from afar. Why don't you come to our desert city to play? A man with a wrapped head and a long gown came over. His eyes were deep, his tone of voice was a little strange, but his face was very enthusiastic. Yunxi stepped back unnoticeably and let Shen-san come out. She just noticed that all the people walking outside were men, without a single woman. Where did the woman go? What did they do to her? Or are there no women here? Come in quickly. I advise you not to leave at this time. The storm period is about to begin. The man glanced at the sky outside. No one dares to be outside at this time. Everyone will return to the desert city. After confirming that he was not lying, Shen-san asked, how long will the storm period last? It usually takes about half a month to end. You can come into the city. The house in the middle and the house at the edge are for tourists. The man pointed to the two houses. After thanking the man, the master and apprentice found a house on the edge and moved in. 2 people? 2 rooms? It's the storm period now. You have to pay extra. It's 500 silver for half a month. The man sitting at the counter yawned lazily. When he was about to lower his head, he suddenly saw Yunxi's chin. Are you a woman? Then you can go to the largest house in the city center. Everything for women is free. Yunxi lowered her voice and said, thank you. We'll just stay here. She paid the money readily. Anyway, for her now, let alone 500 silver, she can afford 500 gold. The person at the counter did not persuade her anymore, but just said, during the storm period, no one goes out. There will be an event in the house in the city center. You can go there to have fun and eat free food. If you are too lazy to go, you can also buy from me. A meal here costs 10 silver, but what you eat is random. Chapter 77 Concubine. Zheng. The musicians on the stage played the piano, the dancers below danced gracefully, and the men embraced each other and drank and had fun. When Yunxi walked in, she had already encountered 3 people who wanted to put their hands on her. She also changed from smiling at the beginning to angry, and then to expressionless at the end. Seeing that she was about to go crazy, it was Shen-san who caught up in time and hugged her waist lightly, so that no one came to disturb her again. Shen-san was tall and had a very imposing manner just standing there. Seeing him standing next to Yunxi, the men in the room restrained themselves a lot and stopped looking at her. Yunxi was too lazy to pay attention to these boring guys, and sat down at the table with Shen-san and started eating. After walking in the desert for so long, their bodies and minds were extremely tired, and no one wanted to cook for themselves. Of course, there was another reason, that is, to cook in the place where they lived, they had to pay 10 silver for a meal, which was the same price as borrowing the kitchen to cook for themselves. They sent little things, and there were only cakes, and no other side dishes. They simply came to this place that was said to be the center of the city to eat. The two looked at the tables full of delicious food, and they were allowed to choose by themselves, and they couldn't help but fall into silence. Compared with where they lived, the food here is much better, right? Not only are there all kinds of barbecued meats, but also all kinds of fruits and vegetables. It looks like returning to a prosperous area. Yunxi looked around, not paying attention to the exquisitely baked bread, and directly put a lot of roast beef in the bowl. In the forest continent, she had almost no chance to eat beef. If she ran into it this time, she would naturally eat more. She found an empty table and began to taste it quietly. However, as soon as the meat, which was almost only the outermost layer of roasted meat, entered her mouth, she frowned. Whether in her previous life or this life, she never liked to eat raw food, especially meat. As soon as she ate it, a strange smell of blood filled her mouth. "Little girl, are you alone?" A rat-faced man suddenly came over, his lewd eyes swept up and down her figure, and then he smiled crookedly, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. The hand of the rat-faced man gradually approached Lu Yunxi's face. Ugh, she couldn't control the churning in her stomach and vomited directly. The rat-faced man closed his eyes tightly, his whole face wrinkled together, looking very painful. He stiffly reached out to wipe the vomit off his face. He looked at his clothes covered with the vomit, and then looked at Lu Yunxi, who had no expression on her face. After repeating this twice, he finally widened his eyes in disbelief and pointed at her. You dare to vomit on me? Do you know who I am? You don't even know who you are. How can I know? She put the knife and fork on the plate, drank a little of the drink, and looked up very calmly. "And you said I vomited on you. If you didn't insist on coming over, how could I vomit on you? Didn't you see me waving my hand at you just now? Now you just asked for it." The rat-faced man was so angry that smoke came out of his head. He looked at her in shock for a long time, then turned around and ran away crying in anger. Lu Yunxi didn't care, put down the drink in her hand, leaned back slightly, and tried her best to make her abdomen feel better. It can be said that the food here only looks exquisite, but it tastes terrible, not as delicious as the snacks sold in ordinary stalls in the desert city. Whether it is staple food, vegetables, meat, or drinks and snacks, she tried all the food and stopped eating. None of them are delicious. Fortunately, there are enough foods here, and it is enough to eat a small piece. After this day, the two of them never came to the house in the city center again, but went out to find a place to cook. Anyway, there is no need to walk too far during the day, just find a place to bury the eggs in the sand, and the eggs will be cooked after a while. In this way, a lot of the ingredients that were stored before were used. In this way, the half-month stay finally ended, and the storm outside almost stopped. Lu Yunxi and Shen San set out on the journey again. However, before leaving the desert city, the two of them were in front of the black perfume. A strong perfume smell floated in the air. Lu Yunxi opened his eyes and saw a familiar person. He was wearing a dress with gold trim, and looked like a decent person. He exuded a strong fragrance. He looked up with his hands behind his back, looking down at her. "Who are you?" She moved her hands and feet, trying to sit up, but found that she couldn't move and was weak all over. The man standing in front of the bed was stunned, and then he was furious. "You don't even remember me? You vomited all over me a few days ago. I have never forgotten you." When Lu Yunxi heard this, she looked at his face carefully and found that he was the rat man she met that day. "It's you. What did you do to me?" She raised her eyebrows, perfunctorily answered him, and tried to raise her hand to feel her pulse. "What's wrong?" The rat man looked down at her. "Tonight is my wedding day. You will be my concubine in the future. You have to serve me and the princess tonight, understand, princess?" "Are you a prince?" At this moment, she was really surprised. This wretched rat face is actually a prince. She didn't believe it. "Huh? What? Are you scared now?" Mouse Face looked down at her with a proud face. "If you're scared, just beg me." After Lu Yunxi found the antidote for the drug, she felt relieved, yawned and fell asleep. Mouse Face was ignored and was furious. Just as he was about to climb onto the bed and teach her a lesson, there was a knock on the door. "Prince, it's time for you to go to the banquet." Mouse Face glared at her coldly, and then rushed out angrily. Not long after the door was closed, a person sneaked in. "Master," Lu Yunxi heard this familiar voice, a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes, and then she opened her eyes. "Chen San, master." "Hush," he raised his finger and put it in front of his lips to signal. "We have been drugged, but fortunately I bought the antidote for the drug before. You should take it quickly." She took the medicine silently. "I just walked around outside and have figured out the terrain here. Let's take advantage of the banquet outside and run out quickly." She paused, and she was too lazy to investigate, so she just listened to her representatives. The two avoided the crowd and ran out secretly. When they were about to run out of the desert city, the center of the city suddenly became a commotion. "They only realized that we ran away now? Aren't they too slow?" Lu Yunxi complained. With a level of Mouse Face, how dare he drug them? Aren't they afraid of being killed? However, just after he finished speaking, he saw a large group of people swarming out, their eyes like scanners, not letting go of any corner. Under such observation that did not miss a single weed, the two of them were soon discovered. "I saw them, in the south, catch them quickly." A group of people ran over. Lu Yunxi and Shen San twitched their mouths and quickened their pace. Generally speaking, fighting with ordinary NPCs would not only result in red names, but also give them nothing. It was really a thankless task, so the two did not want to fight with him. However, accidents always come unexpectedly. Not long after they ran out of the city, a sudden storm swept in. Amid the exclamations of the people chasing behind them, the two were unable to dodge and were instantly caught in the storm, flying uncontrollably in the wind. Before she lost consciousness, she decisively added a protective shield for herself and her apprentice. Chapter 78, Get Out. Sunshine, waves, and the beach. Lu Yunxi wore sunglasses and a bikini, lying on a beach chair. The handsome blonde boy next to her squeezed sunscreen on his hand and smiled brightly. "Sister, I will apply sunscreen on you now, okay?" She nodded gently at the boy with a refreshing smile. "Apply more on your back." However, before the boy came up, a basin of water was poured down. She shuddered on the spot. Swish, Lu Yunxi opened her eyes suddenly and saw the beautiful and mysterious ocean. So, was she dreaming just now? She was distracted for a long time before she noticed that she was in the wrong place. She was actually in the ocean. Beside her was Shen San, who was holding her with one hand and flapping his hands with the other. Not far away, you can see beautiful corals, lively little fish, and translucent jellyfish floating, which looks beautiful and mysterious. A jellyfish slowly approached her hand, and she subconsciously dodged it. Shen San felt her movements, turned his head and saw that she had woken up, and immediately smiled in surprise. "Master, cough, pure Lulu." Father, seeing that he choked and coughed, and then his eyes rolled back and he was about to fall into the seabed. Lu Yunxi immediately opened a protective shield to separate the seawater and other creatures. Standing in the transparent bubble-shaped protective shield, he bent over and coughed hard, spitting out all the water in his mouth, and then sat down in the protective shield. "Master, it's great that you woke up." He didn't have the skills of the master. If she woke up later, maybe both of them would have died at the bottom of the sea. Lu Yunxi nodded, looked up at the endless ocean, and suddenly said, "Shen San, do you know where we are now?" "This. I don't know, I just woke up a few seconds earlier than you." She nodded, her face solemn. "The situation is a bit bad. Although there are some people in each continent who know about other continents, there is no place in the continent she has been to where people sell maps of the entire world. The maps that can be bought in each place are all maps of their own continent. No one has ever drawn a map outside the ocean. If it was like before, it would be fine if it fell directly into a continent, but now it fell into the ocean. This is not much different from falling into the desert. It's also walking in an endless place. At most, it's not so hot and cold. Let's go to the sea first." She felt a little uncomfortable staying on the seabed. "You're right, Master." Shen San stared at something in a daze and answered unconsciously. Lu Yunxi followed his line of sight and saw that their protective shield was being bitten by a small shark. It's called a small shark, that is relative to the shark group. It should still be small, but compared to the two of them, this shark is already quite big. When it bit around the protective shield, it exuded a dangerous breath. Shen San gradually calmed down and slowly drew out the giant sword. She immediately stretched out her hand to block him, very calmly. "Don't be afraid, my shield is of a high level. Not to mention one shark, even if there are 100 sharks coming, it is impossible to bite the shield." Hearing her say this, Shen San immediately retracted the giant sword. Yes, even if there are sharks behind him, he is not worried. That's how much trust he has in his master. Who made his master so awesome? Lu Yunxi ignored the sharks chasing him next to him, and manipulated the shield, swimming slowly all the way up. "By the way, let's catch a few fish on the way. I don't have much food in my backpack." However, before he finished speaking, the waves in front of the two of them suddenly rolled up. The waves were turbulent. In such a huge wave, it was impossible to see the direction or the surrounding situation. Lu Yunxi had to give up manipulating the shield and let it sway around with the waves. For a long time, after everything was quiet, she opened her eyes blankly, but found that the whole world was dark. She, blind? The fear that burst out in an instant made her a little overwhelmed. Her hands and feet moved subconsciously, but it seemed to touch something soft. A deep voice groaned and sounded softly beside her ear. Lu Yunxi asked tentatively, "Chen San? Are you there?" "Master, it's me." A slightly hoarse voice sounded behind her. She was a little confused. "Are you injured?" As she said that, she quickly found a torch from the space. The light of the torch illuminated this small area. She looked around and finally found Shen San, who was sitting on the ground by her. After a pause, she quickly got up and pulled him up. No wonder she didn't feel any pain at all. It turned out that there was a cushion under her. Shen San stood up with a grin and loosened his muscles. He kept a stiff posture all the time, which made him numb and painful all over. "Master, where are we?" He turned his neck to observe the surroundings while warming up. However, Yunxi didn't know. The two of them each took a lighting tool and began to walk in this narrow place. Will there be caves on the seabed? Did we wash ashore? After watching this dark and narrow environment, the two of them made their own guesses. Let's eat something first. Yunxi took out a bun from her backpack. Originally, she used it as a medicine to restore health and mana, so she had never touched it, but now it doesn't matter. As long as she can eat enough, it's fine. The two sat down and discussed their future plans while eating. Shen San was eating, and suddenly his eyes widened and pointed behind her. "Master, look!" Yunxi turned around suddenly and saw that a strange liquid suddenly flowed out from the edge of the narrow cave. The small fish and shrimps next to them disappeared completely after being submerged in the liquid, without even a bone left. Her pupils suddenly dilated. "Oh no! We may have entered the stomach of some creature." In layman's terms, they were eaten. Shen San's face changed. The two walked to the middle of the protective shield and looked at the other things submerged by gastric juice. Their faces were very subtle. "Master, will the protective shield be destroyed? Do I need to go out and kill this monster?" Shen San cracked his joints and moved his hands and feet. "Don't go. The creature that ate us is a master-level monster." Yunxi lowered her head and ate the bun silently. "It's very safe inside the protective shield, but we may be exited." Shen San was stunned when he heard master level. Master level, at least over level 90 is called master level. Did the game release such a monster so early? However, after learning that the power of the protective shield is safe, he was relieved. "What do you mean by go out? Can't we go out?" "It's okay, Master, I will practice well, and when I practice more powerfully, I will be able to defeat this monster and get out." He comforted her optimistically. After Yunxi was full, she looked at him silently, and then looked at the bun in his mouth. "I'm not saying that we can't get out, I mean, we may be excreted with feces." Shen San coughed violently, his face turned black, looked at the bun in his hand, and silently put it away. She also silently added 2 protective shields and put them together to avoid the smell being too strong later. After that, the two of them sat in meditation quietly, waiting to leave the belly of the monster. However, the time to get out was faster than they thought. "Master, be careful." Shen San hugged her tightly, protecting her head with one hand. The two of them flew around in the protective shield, following a stream of water, and it was unknown which direction they were drifting. Chapter 79 Water in the Sea. Even though Yunxi was already a master, she could only go with the flow when she was inside the protective shield. Time passed little by little. At first, she was still very sober, but gradually, she felt carsick. "Shen San, are you dizzy?" She covered her mouth and looked at her apprentice worriedly. "I'm fine, Master, are you uncomfortable?" Shen San looked at her carefully, took out a sachet from his backpack and placed it in front of her nose. "Smell this, it's a citrus-flavored sachet, it should make you feel better." Seeing that he was not uncomfortable, Yunxi was relieved and closed her eyes at ease. "No, I won't feel dizzy when I fall asleep, you should take a rest too." However, the facts soon told her that her thoughts were too beautiful. In a turn that was 100 times more thrilling than a roller coaster, she couldn't sleep at all. Not long after, the protective shield they were in suddenly rose up. "Strange, are we going up?" Yunxi frowned. "Master, Shen San was about to say something. But after an ethereal voice echoed, the two of them suddenly seemed to be pushed up by a fountain and gushed out with a fountain. Yunxi looked at the huge island-like place below her and was shocked. It was actually a whale that ate them. The whale swam leisurely, spraying water from above. The long water column looked very spectacular, and with its movement, the surrounding waves were also surging and rolling. "Master, are you okay?" Shen San came up and saw that she was sitting calmly. Then he turned back to look at the huge whale with a look of surprise. "There is such a big creature in the sea, and it defecates from the top of its head." "No," she twitched her eyes, "this should not be the place where it defecates, but it's probably a place similar to the nostrils," she guessed. In her previous life, She was not engaged in biological research, and she didn't know these things, so she soon dropped the question. Don't go over there, it's too dangerous to get close to this guy. Let's swim away and get on the boat. The 10th day of drifting on the boat. Shen-san was lying in the middle of the flower boat. Because the boat was too small, he could only curl up in frustration. He touched his stomach and looked at the sky with lifeless eyes. Master, I'm so hungry. Yunxi was sitting in another corner, fishing seriously. Wait a little longer, you'll catch some fish soon. When Shen-san heard the word fish, tears were about to fall. The master's fishing skills were indeed quite superb, and the fish he caught were many and big. But in this small boat, it was impossible to start a fire. They could only eat sashimi every day. It felt good at first, but after eating it for a long time, it really felt uncomfortable to eat this thing. It was cold and had no temperature at all. For the first time, he missed those old stoves that needed to burn firewood. Yunxi certainly noticed Shen-san's depression, but he didn't want to comfort him. In fact, a bigger crisis was about to appear. They didn't have much cactus and water stored in the desert oasis before, so they couldn't leave it for future generations, right? They couldn't fish out all the fish. Now the trouble is coming. In these 10 days, the water they prepared before was almost finished. If they continued like this, they would die of thirst instead of starving to death. People can go without food for 3 days. But they cannot go without water for 3 days. Thinking of this, she fixed a fishing rod on the boat, holding the fishing rod in one hand so that she could feel the movement of the fishing rod, while putting her consciousness into the space. Dried meat, salted duck eggs, pickled cabbage, forget about these, they taste salty, and the more you eat, the thirstier you will be. Dried medicinal herbs, dried food ingredients, these are useless, what she needs is water. Master, the voice of the apprentice suddenly rang in her ears. Yunxi regained consciousness and looked at him. What's wrong, master? I have an idea. Chen-san waved a letter paper in his hand. I can write a letter to my friend and ask him to send something to me, right? Is there anything you want? She was stunned at first, and then grabbed his hand with excitement. Yes, yes. Disciple, you are smart. Hurry up and ask someone to send water. We don't have enough water to drink. There is no rush for other things. Chen-san was stunned for a moment, and looked at her hesitantly. Master, how much water is left? I heard that it takes longer to send a letter in the sea than on land. It takes about 3 days. If you count the round trip, it will take at least 6 days. If we save a little, we can probably drink for a day, right? The two looked at each other. The atmosphere suddenly became silent and anxious. However, Yunxi still estimated wrong. In fact, it was worse than imagined. I don't know if it was because the seafood was salty. All the remaining juicy fruits, wild vegetables, and medicinal herbs were taken out, and the juice squeezed out was used sparingly, but it could only barely last for half a day. 2 more days passed. Yunxi and Shen-san were lying on the boat. One was lying inside the boat, and the other was on a boat on top. But both of them had the same calm expression. They had slept through the past 2 days. When they slept, they didn't feel thirsty. Beep beep. When the alarm set by the system rang, she knew it was time to eat again. She took out a bunch of buns from her backpack and gave a light to Shen-san. These buns were enough for Shen-san to eat for a month. She was afraid that he would have no food in his bag after she fell into coma, so she gave them to him in advance. After giving the buns with half-closed eyes, she laid down again. Time gradually became blurred, and the world around them seemed to become nothingness. The sound of tick, tick continued to ring. Shen-san? Did you give me some water? Has it been 6 days? Yunxi's eyelids seemed to be glued together, and she couldn't open them, but she could feel liquid constantly flowing into her mouth. She greedily sucked the fresh water, up, this sticky water. Master? Do you feel better? Shen-san's voice was sunny, as if everything was fine, but Yunxi had taught him for so long and had some understanding of him. She opened her eyes with all her strength, but what she saw was a pale and thin face. What's the matter? Why are you like this? He looked even worse than her. She had left a large part of the water for him before, so it shouldn't be like this. Shen-san forced a smile, lay down again, and closed his eyes. I gave you some filtered seawater, just use it for now. Yunxi knew that he was worried about her, so she smiled too. She reached out and touched the seawater that had not yet dried on her lips, feeling a little helpless. However, when she lowered her head, she found the remaining red marks on her fingers. She was startled and rubbed her fingers. It was blood. Her eyes tightened, and she immediately threw a detection spell at the person under her, and found that his blood bar had actually dropped by half. Yunxi took a deep breath. She knew that Shen San was worried about her, so he fed her blood, but this was also. The thoughts in her heart were complicated and difficult to describe for a while. She closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. About 10 minutes later, Shen San got up carefully and ate the buns. However, the buns she made could only restore blood, but could not solve the problem of lack of water. Shen San had lost a lot of blood and was even more dehydrated. His body was much weaker than hers. After barely recovering his blood, he fell asleep again. Yunxi opened her eyes and stared straight at the sky with confusion. After a long while, she turned over and sat up and started fishing. Maybe she could find something to replenish water in the sea? With a glimmer of hope, she ate 2 buns, set up 2 fishing rods at the same time, and once again used the detection technique. Chapter 80 Unknown Side Effects. Yunxi looked at the huge mushroom she caught and fell into deep thought. Can mushrooms grow in the sea? With her current chef level, she can easily judge which part of the food is safe and which part is unsafe. But this mushroom is a bit strange. She feels that it is a kind of mushroom between safe and unsafe. Moreover, the only information obtained by the detection technique is. After thinking for a long time, she took out a knife and cut a mushroom open. Surprisingly, the umbrella end of the mushroom is hollow, and there is a lot of juice inside. Yunxi was delighted and immediately took out bottles and jars to collect the juice from the mushroom. After taking out the juice from the mushroom, the remaining is the mushroom meat. At this time, she explored again, but found that the mushroom juice was safe, and in the remaining mushroom meat, there was actually a lot of mushroom juice if you squeezed it, but there would be side effects after eating it. The trouble is that although she knew there were side effects, the detection technique could not detect what the side effects were. Yunxi pondered for a while, carefully put away the mushroom meat, took a small taste, waited patiently for a while, and then fed the mushroom juice to Shen San. The water in the middle of the sea mushroom tastes like boiled water, which is quite thirst-quenching. She fed it very carefully to avoid wasting this hard-earned water. Although this mushroom is quite big, the juice inside is only enough for one person to use for 2 days. This is still the most economical way to eat it. Master, when Shen San woke up, he noticed the wetness of his lips and was stunned. He subconsciously looked at her hand. Yunxi flattened the corners of her mouth and said like a scolding, "What are you looking at?" As she said that, she suddenly looked at him with a smile. "Are you looking for a wound on my hand?" Hearing this weird remark, Shen San's heart jumped suddenly, and he turned his head to see the master with a strange expression on his face. Master, he laughed dryly and touched his nose, but he was secretly worried in his heart. Did she find it or not? Don't do this again next time. Yunxi was too lazy to pay attention to his little thoughts. We haven't reached the most difficult time yet. There is no need to sacrifice your life to save me. Master, I said I won't die, so you don't need to worry about me. Your life is the most important. If the master is gone, where can he find such a powerful master? Seeing that the master was about to preach with a stern face, he quickly changed the subject. Speaking of which, Master, have you found water? Or has the stuff my friend sent arrived? What are you thinking about? It's only the 3rd day since the pigeon left. The fishing rod moved, and she naturally caught the fish in the sea and put it in her backpack. I just caught a big mushroom, and there was a lot of water in it, so I fed it to you. Shen San looked at the system panel where he had cleared a dehydration debuff, and grinned immediately. Master, I'm recovered now, let me help you fish. He took the fishing rod and sat down with great interest. The two sat quietly for a while. Yunxi began to feel dizzy again. She tried to suppress her discomfort and tried to make herself look better. However, Shen San's observation ability should not be underestimated. He immediately came to her when he saw her frowning slightly. Master, why do you look so bad? Seeing the master's chapped lips, he thought of something in an instant, and his hands trembled slightly. Did you give me all the mushroom juice? He pursed his lips, not knowing what to say. He obviously just felt that the master knew too many life skills, and he was reluctant to lose this NPC master, but she was so good to him. Even in the real world, not many people can do this. He is just an insignificant apprentice of hers. Without him, she can accept another 100 apprentices. Master, thank you. He lowered his eyes, and his Adam's apple rolled up and down, but you should keep it for yourself next time. Lu Yunxi did not notice the complicated emotions of the apprentice. She was looking at the mushroom meat in the backpack, with her hands on her chest and thought, the remaining mushroom juice is definitely not enough for the two of them to survive. Should she eat the mushroom meat? Do it as soon as you say it. She took out a large bowl and squeezed out the juice from the mushroom meat with a spoon. After squeezing, she found that the juice in the mushroom meat was no less than the juice wrapped in the mushroom. But unfortunately, after using the detection technique, she still got the same words, "It has unknown effects, please consume with caution." Shen Sam stood by, watching her pondering for a while, fiddling with mushrooms for a while, and staring at the mushroom juice for a while, and suddenly looked over curiously. "Master, is this what you gave me to eat?" Lu Yunxi shook her head. "You eat the water wrapped in the mushroom itself, not the water in the mushroom meat." Almost the moment he heard this, Shen Sam figured it out. Is this mushroom meat inedible? Lu Yunxi didn't say anything, and tentatively stretched out her hand. Her thirsty lips approached a bowl of squeezed juice. No matter what the side effects are, she doesn't care. If this goes on, her life will be gone. Who cares about the side effects? A slender hand suddenly stretched out, blocking her lips, blocking the bowl from approaching. "Master, how about letting me try first?" Shen Sam smiled brightly, but stretched out his other hand, about to take the bowl. But how could Lu Yunxi allow it? As a disciple, Shen Sam was already very good. He could stand in front of her when there was danger, when there was trouble, he would come forward to solve it. He took good care of her in terms of food, clothing, housing, transportation, and every aspect. But he always hid behind his disciple. What kind of talk? "I am the master." She pushed away her disciple's hand and drank the whole bowl of mushroom juice without hesitation. Gulp. She sighed with comfort. The mushroom juice moistened her thirsty lips and throat, making her feel extremely comfortable. The waves and sky that she was tired of seeing before also became beautiful. "Master, are you okay?" Shen San approached her tentatively, with a flash of worry in his eyes. Lu Yunxi sat and felt it for a while, but still didn't find any changes, so he was relieved. It seems that nothing is wrong. "Let's go. Go to sleep first, save your energy. This should be enough for us to hold on until your friend brings water." The two lay down again, blowing the sea breeze, and fell asleep again. At night, the sea breeze blew, bringing a cool breeze. The flower-like boats floated slowly on the sea. In the faint moonlight, Shen San cut the fish into slices and put them on the bowl, and then went to wake up the master. "Master, you can eat." He gently pushed the master who was sleeping on the board, but found that his strength suddenly increased. The master who couldn't be pushed at ordinary times, was pushed by him lightly, and he rolled into the sea. Shen San was stunned for a while before he suddenly reacted. "Master! Don't!" He was startled, took off his heavy clothes in a few seconds, and was about to jump into the sea. But a thin hand suddenly stretched out. "Chen San, I'm already here." Along with the appearance of a small hand, a familiar but slightly strange voice also spoke. You, looking at the black shadow climbing up, emitting a faint voice in such a dark night, even Shen San felt his heartbeat speed up a lot. He took a step back and stuck to the edge of the pedal boat. "Who are you?" Lu Yunxi, who had just climbed out of the sea, looked at him inexplicably, thinking that he was joking again, and replied casually, "Who else can I be? Of course I am your master." As she spoke, she lifted up the hem of her skirt and wrung it hard. However, the hem of her skirt today seemed to be much heavier than before, and it took a lot of effort to twist it, as if it was not a skirt but a quilt. She panted hard, wiping the sweat from her forehead from time to time. "It's really strange. Why is the skirt so heavy today, master?" A faint voice came from above. Lu Yunxi looked around inexplicably, but saw a huge figure. "Hey! Shen San, you little brat, why are you scaring me?" She was so scared that she covered her chest and couldn't help but glared at him angrily. "When did you learn this trick? You can even grow so big." Chapter 81. Is it good? Shen San squatted down, took out a night pearl, and placed it in the middle of the boat. In an instant, there was finally a touch of brilliance in the originally dark night. Lu Yunxi saw the surroundings clearly and was about to nod, but suddenly she noticed something was wrong and her breathing stagnated for a moment. However, before she could figure it out herself, Shen San knelt on one knee on the ground, looking at her with his eyes level, carefully placing his hands on her shoulders, and said in a slightly solemn tone, "Master, it's not me who has become bigger, it's you who has become smaller." Boom. It was as if something exploded in her mind. She turned her neck stiffly and looked at the pedal boat that was not even as high as her waist, but was now as tall as her. But tragically, this was not the end. As she looked at the boats around her, she was still slowly getting shorter, and the boats were getting higher and higher for her. Until an hour later, Yunxi's height stopped changing. "Master, are you okay?" Shen-san glanced at her dazed face and asked carefully. "Are you okay?" "Of course not." She stood there in a daze, looking up at the edge of the boat beside her, which was much taller than the city wall, and calmed down. How tall is she now? Maybe shorter than a baby? If it is a baby, it should be at least half the height of the boat. "Shen-san, look at how tall I am." She was a little nervous, her throat moved slightly unconsciously, and she instructed the apprentice beside her. Shen-san knelt on the ground silently, glanced at her, and carefully held her in his palm. "Master, you are about 10 centimeters tall now." 10 centimeters, Yunxi sat in his palm, her face very ugly. Yes, if she had grown taller, she wouldn't be like this, and she could still be held in someone's palm. "Is this a side effect of that mushroom?" Shen-san stretched out a finger to comfort her and touched her shoulder carefully. "Fortunately, it's just getting smaller, it's good that it won't hurt." She pushed a finger on her shoulder away, looked at the prompt on the system panel, and clenched her fist tightly. Not only did her body get smaller, her level actually returned to level 10. Strength, agility, and mental strength all returned to 100. Damn it. While Yunxi was thinking about how to solve the problem, Shen-san had been secretly watching her. The little master is so cute. When she is angry, her round little face swells up. When she speaks, her fat little face moves. Even when she is sitting, she looks so cute. A completely different master from her usual elegant and calm appearance. He secretly turned on the system's camera and took a picture of the master's appearance. He would keep this photo well. Yunxi did not notice that her apprentice acted like a pervert. Looking at the explanation in the detection technique, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the side effects of this mushroom last about half a year to a year. As time goes by, she will grow up slowly, and her original level will gradually recover. Unfortunately, during the time she becomes smaller, the level experience on the attribute panel will not increase. Fortunately, the levels of various skills are still the original levels. During this time, she can brush up on the skill experience. "Master, do you want to eat first?" Noticing that the master's frown had relaxed, he hurried over with a plate. "Okay." Yunxi looked at the plate as big as a playground and couldn't help but twitching her eyes. She stood up and wanted to walk over to get a piece of fish fillet, but she didn't notice the layers of fabric under her feet and accidentally tripped. She fell on a pile of soft fabric, her face buried in the fabric, and her face turned red. Damn. It's so embarrassing to fall in front of her apprentice. You know, her personality in front of her apprentice has always been elegant, calm, and a great talent. Not a little baby who falls flat on the ground. Ahem, an unnatural cough sounded beside her. Yunxi came back to her senses from the embarrassment, raised her head and saw that the tip of her apprentice's ears was slightly red, and he turned his head and looked at the sea seriously. Look at the sea? In this dark time? She was a little confused, and was about to ask him if he had found anything, but suddenly heard him speak. "Master, do you want to find yourself a set of clothes?" His voice had a slightly unnatural tone, and his eyes never looked in her direction. Yunxi suddenly had a bad feeling. She lowered her head and saw that the big skirt she had originally put on her body had slid down a lot because she had just moved. Her smooth shoulders were exposed, and she could vaguely feel the dampness and coldness of the sea breeze. She stiffened for a moment, and then quickly pulled up the skirt, which was bigger than her quilt, to wrap herself up. The sea breeze was blowing, but her cheeks felt inexplicably hot. The master and disciple looked to the south and the north respectively, as if flowers had grown in front of their eyes, and they looked very seriously. The atmosphere fell into a strange silence. It was only after Yunxi blew the cold wind for a while and felt her whole face turned cold that she urged him, "Hurry up, we haven't had dinner yet. When your friend brings the water, you can make me a piece of clothing." "I don't have any suitable clothes in my bag." "Huh?" Shen-san instantly forgot the embarrassment just now. Making clothes. In the morning, the sky was clear. Shen-san sat on the boat, holding a sewing needle in one hand and a piece of cloth in the other, as if he was holding a bomb, very stiff. "What's wrong with you?" So quickly, Yunxi urged him. "Why are you standing there, master? Don't worry, this is my first time sewing clothes. and I'm not familiar with it yet." He wiped the sweat off his head, carefully picked up the needle, and sewed the small piece of cloth that he had just cut carefully. He was obviously sewing clothes, but he thought he was diffusing a bomb. She sat aside helplessly, holding her chin and looking at him. Unfortunately, she had neither the materials to make sewing needles nor the sewing needles that were suitable for her current use, so she could only rely on her apprentice to help her make clothes. He had to wipe his sweat almost every few minutes, but there was no progress in making clothes. He couldn't help but hold his forehead. "Chen-san, put me on your shoulders." She made her hands into trumpet shape and shouted vigorously several times. Shen-san, who was immersed in sewing, came back to his senses after a long time, and looked at her in a trance. "Master? Oh, you want to get on my shoulders, okay." Yunxi saw his dazed look and had a headache. Who knew that this would happen? If she had known earlier, she should have taught her apprentice needlework earlier. "Chen-san, calm down. I have a big dress to cover you. Don't worry." She patted his shoulder and softened her voice when she felt his muscles tense. "Even if you can't make it, when we get to the town, can't we just ask someone to make it for me?" Under her guidance, Shen-san gradually relaxed his body and began to sew clothes in a professional manner. Yunxi sat on his shoulders, holding a piece of cloth that could be used as a bath towel for her now, jumping and wiping his sweat from time to time. Just like that. It took 3 whole days. This simple dress was finally completed. "Master, try it." After Shen-san finished making the small dress, his face was full of satisfaction, and he held it in front of her to show it. "Great, great." Yunxi nodded constantly, with a smile on her face. She took the small dress and got into a small space that had been built with cloth before. In order to make Shen-san successfully make the clothes, she changed the design of the clothes several times. At first, she wanted to make a simple short dress made of coarse cloth, but Shen-san couldn't make such a complicated thing at all. Later, she changed it to the most basic skirt, but he still couldn't make it. Finally, she had to change it to a style like a bath towel, but added an adhesive strip on the edge so that it could be stuck together, so there would be no need to worry about it falling off when wearing it. After she put it on, she smiled with satisfaction. It fits perfectly. Although it looks like a modern tube-top dress, which is completely different from the ancient ones, at least she doesn't have to hide under her old skirt with her bare butt. "Shen-san, you are great." Yunxi laughed and ran out of her fitting room, opened her arms, and showed it off from front to back. "How is it? Do I look good in it?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Sleepiness. Chen-san looked at the exposed shoulders of his master, paused strangely, and then nodded. "It looks good, master. Do you want me to make you a shawl? Will it be cold with your shoulders exposed?" "No, don't bother," Yunxi replied casually, feeling the novelty of becoming smaller, running around here and there. Chen-san picked up the sewing needle again and gestured to make her a waistcoat. When he lowered his head, he secretly covered his nose and breathed a sigh of relief. Obviously, in the real world, he has seen thousands of women, and there are also hot and beautiful women. But no one, when he saw them, could feel as stunning as when he saw his master, and he felt breathless. He frowned a little distressed and touched his hot ears with his cold hands. Could it be that he is actually a pervert? Grabbing the cloth in his hand, he sighed a little depressed. "Forget it. I'd better make a waistcoat for my master quickly to cover her shoulders, otherwise people will bleed from their noses." A few days later, Yunxi was wearing a science skirt that covered her ankles, and a cute vest of the same color that covered her shoulders. The material of the dress was very thick. Generally speaking, if you wear it like this, you won't feel cold even on the sea. But she was really cold now. She didn't care about the distinction between men and women, or the difference between master and apprentice, and got into Shen-san's neck, leaving only her eyes exposed. She sighed comfortably as she felt a warm body temperature coming from her. However, although Yunxi had become smaller, she could still hide on Shen-san's body, but Shen-san himself had nowhere to hide. He was also huddled in the center of the boat, shivering. Even though he had wrapped himself in thick quilts, it was of no use. The cold seemed to fill the entire world. No matter where he went, it was extremely cold, and the icy feeling spread to every part of his body. "Master, master, are you okay?" His teeth chattered as he tried to comfort his master who was curled up in his neck. "By the way, do you want to drink some water? Warm yourself up." Yunxi was feeling worse and worse. Shen-san was shaking so hard that she was shaking all the time, as if she was sitting in a car. Moreover, although it was not very obvious, his body temperature was dropping. "Shen-san, drink some water and eat something to replenish your energy." She patted the people around her hard, lest he lose consciousness soon. Shen-san resisted the trembling and tried his best to get some water out of his backpack. However, as soon as he took out a bowl of water and touched the cold air, the water froze into ice in an instant. Before he could even get close to his mouth, he looked at the ice in the bowl and remained silent. Yunxi thought it was not good and immediately searched in the space. A gust of wind came, carrying the cold air, blowing on the body, but it made people stiffen uncontrollably. "Chen-san, learn this skill and use it immediately." She took out the skill she had saved from the space with difficulty and handed it to her apprentice. It was too urgent at this time. If she were to learn, she would have to read page by page. Where would she have so much time to study? But Shen-san was a player. Not only could they learn by reading books, but they could also learn skills with one click. Shen-san ignored the cold, took the skilled book and slapped it, and learned the skill. Then, a translucent ball of light that surrounded the lights like a glass ball appeared beside the two of them, bringing a burst of warm heat. Shen-san's body, which was almost stiff, gradually recovered. "Master, do you want to sit on the fireball? It's warm here." The warm orange light was reflected in his eyes. He looked at his master quietly, with a relaxed smile on his face. Seeing that her apprentice had finally recovered, Yunxi breathed a sigh of relief and smiled helplessly. "No, it's a pity that you have to learn this skill. It is only a green grade skill. Players have limited skill slots, and can only learn 10 skills in total. And the skill she just gave was too lame. In addition to keeping people warm in winter, and the skills look good, which can occasionally make people pretend to be cool, it has no other functions. It can even be said that it has no combat power at all. Otherwise, she would not have thrown these into the space and had no intention of learning them at all. These skills are more or less useless." Shen-san was stunned for a moment. Is the master also like them, with restrictions on the skills he can learn? "It doesn't matter, master, at least this skill can keep us alive now." He breathed a sigh of relief, smiled and picked up the fireball, and a warm heat flowed into his limbs. "Master, are you okay?" Shen-san carefully held the master and walked hard in the blizzard. Yunxi looked at him weakly, raised her hand to stop him. "Don't talk anymore. Talking here really consumes energy. Let's go back to the beach." She was wondering why it was suddenly icy and snowy. It turned out that they had come to the ice continent. At first, they went to the flower continent, and the two sides were the desert continent and the ice continent. The continents of the entire world are distributed in the shape of a flower, with a small island in the middle of the flower core, and the other continents are like petals, surrounding the small island in the middle. Just like a clock, whether walking in a clockwise direction or a counterclockwise direction, they will eventually circle the entire continent and return to the original place. Logically, they should have gone around a big circle from the desert continent to the ice continent, but who knew that after being blown away by the wind on the desert continent, they drifted on the sea and actually drifted to the ice continent on the other side. It should be that we were blown back to the flower continent by the wind, and then drifted to the ice continent, she guessed. However, this guess is actually useless. The atmosphere returned to silence again, leaving only the sound of the blizzard and their slight breathing. Yunxi hid in his neck and gradually fell asleep comfortably. Shen-san reached out from time to time and gently touched the little person on his neck, so that she would not be thrown away without him noticing. However, the snow was getting heavier and heavier, and the footprints that were only 1 or 2 centimeters deep were getting deeper and deeper. Now, if you step forward, your entire knee will sink into the snow. Originally, they came to the ice continent just to replenish supplies. Who knew that after about an hour in, they didn't see a single figure. Just when they were a little tired, a blizzard suddenly came. Originally, they wanted to quickly exit the ice continent, return to the sea, and go directly to the next continent along the sea route. Who knew that they had been walking back for more than an hour, but they still couldn't see the familiar sea. They walked for more than half an hour. Shen-san bent over, panting, and white smoke kept floating out of his mouth. Even if he didn't feel cold, he didn't have much physical strength. It was too difficult to keep walking. Time began to become long and blurry. Before he was about to lose consciousness, he finally saw a cave. He held his master in his palm with difficulty, used his skills to create a warm fireball and placed it beside the two of them, and then set up a simple trap before letting himself faint. Chen-san? Chen-san! Wake up! Lu Yunxi didn't expect that his apprentice had fallen into coma when he woke up after just a nap. He originally thought that he would be fine with the new skills, but who knew that a coma debuff appeared in the ice continent, coma, in the world of ice and snow. In order to ensure survival, people in the ice continent will fall into comas so that the body can reduce energy dissipation. This thing appeared on both the master and the apprentice. Fortunately, she was a level 10 on the surface, but in fact she was a sealed master, otherwise she might not wake up. Lu Yunxi climbed down from Shen-san with a headache, set up a big pot, and started to cook soup. Dried chili peppers, dried ginger, these things that can dispel coldness, she still has a lot in her bag. Fortunately, these things can't be eaten, otherwise she would have cleared out the stock of these things before. Because there is not much firewood in the space, she uses it very carefully. The firewood burned with a beeping sound, and the ginger soup was gradually cooked. Chapter 83 Snow Mountain Herbs. Lu Yunxi jumped to the pot with 2 bangs, found the smallest bottle in the space, filled a small bottle with ginger soup, and then jumped to Shen-san, carefully carried the bottle, and fed him ginger soup. The effect of ginger soup was very good. Although a lot of ginger soup slid down from the corners of his mouth and only a few drops of ginger soup entered his mouth, Shen-san still gradually opened his eyes. Master, his voice was a little weak, and he understood it when he saw the prompt on the system panel. He walked to the still hot ginger soup and drank a large bowl, and finally completely eliminated the drowsiness debuff. Master, please be careful of the heat. He took a small spoon, scooped up a spoonful of ginger soup, and put the spoon, which was bigger than her face, to her lips. Lu Yunxi lowered her head gently, leaned her lips on the edge of the spoon, and sucked slowly. The warm ginger soup entered her stomach, and her body's strength gradually recovered. However, the effect of ginger soup was actually limited. After more than 6 hours, the effect of ginger soup will disappear, and they need to drink ginger soup again. After packing up the remaining ginger soup, the two laid out a mat, mattress and quilt and lay down on the spot. In the silent night, in the cave, the boy lay quietly in the simple tent, the translucent fireball exuded warmth, and the little girl with finger height snuggled beside him. The translucent protective shield blocked the outside of the cave, blocking the raging snowstorm outside. After a night, the sky began to brighten. Lu Yunxi stretched her arms and stretched her waist. It's so comfortable, during this period of drifting on the sea. How long has it been since she had such a comfortable and relaxing sleep? The sunlight poured in through the cave entrance, casting light and shadows on the two of them. As if feeling the sunlight, Shen-san's eyelashes trembled slightly, and then slowly opened. The brown-black eyes seemed to be stained with a layer of warm golden light in the sunlight, looking sparkling. Master, his eyes were a little confused, as if he had not fully woken up yet, a bit like a big dog wagging its tail at you when you get up early. However, Lu Yunxi did not feel the beauty of the scene in front of her at all. She excitedly jumped onto her apprentice's belly and bounced hard on it like a trampoline. After jumping, her excitement subsided a little. Are you awake? Get up and make breakfast. After eating, we will hurry on our way. Do we still need to find a town on the ice continent for supplies? Shen-san skillfully took out pots and pans, while asking about the next plan. There must be towns on the ice continent. From the forum, there are people on every continent, but the ice continent is too big and there are too few towns. Unlike their forest continent, they can find a town in less than an hour. Here, they searched for a long time but could not see a single person. No, even if we want to replenish supplies in the ice continent, I'm afraid we won't find anything good. There's not even a fruit tree here. Lu Yunxi shook her head, very resistant to this proposal, and then she gritted her teeth. It's better to go to the next place in one go. At worst, we will return to the flower continent. If we can go to other continents, we won't be afraid of having nothing to eat. The flower continent is separated by the desert continent and the ice continent. Which means that at worst, we won't return to the desert continent. Among all the continents, only the desert continent and the ice continent are the most difficult to survive. As long as they go to other continents, they can survive easily. Shen-san nodded, and quickly made a pot of something similar to spicy hot pot. He put all the ingredients in the pot and ate until his mouth was full of red oil. Then he packed his luggage and prepared to rush to the beach. However, there are unexpected events. Just when they were about to leave the cave, the ground suddenly shook. Earthquake. Yunxi grabbed Shen San's collarbone, fearing that she would be thrown out, and at the same time opened a protective shield to protect the two tightly. Shen San was not as lucky as she was because he was facing the earthquake directly and there was nothing around to support him. Almost as soon as the floor shook, he could only kneel down to avoid being thrown out on the spot. Boom! The loud sound of the earth shaking, the sound of ice breaking and falling down vibrated in his ears. Shen San tried his best to keep his body close to the ground and maintain balance. The vibration did not decrease with time, but became more and more intense. Roar! A loud roar sounded. The master and disciples' faces changed, their pupils trembled, and they turned their heads to look around. However, the surroundings were still empty, as if the huge roar just now was an illusion. The vibration gradually subsided. Shen San saw that the movement around him gradually weakened, so he stood up carefully. But in the next second, a gust of wind whistled past, and he flew into the sky. The strong wind blew across his cheeks, like a knife, and it hurt his ears. In fact, except for the sound of the wind, he could not hear the surrounding sounds. "Master, are you okay?" he shouted at the top of his voice. Yunxi had already hidden in his clothes at this time, so she didn't dare to show her head, for fear that she would be blown away by the wind if she was not careful. With her current height of 10 centimeters, if she and Shen San were separated in the air, it would be a miracle if he could find her. "I'm fine, be careful," she also yelled. Fortunately, her position was close to Shen San's ears, otherwise he might not be able to hear her. He was relieved and grabbed the dragon's horn tightly to prevent himself from being thrown off. That's right. After a long time, the movement just now was not an earthquake at all, but the dragon that had been sleeping in the ice for who knows how long suddenly woke up. It just turned over. Those of them on the ice were harmed. The blue dragon rolled in the air for a few times, ignoring Shen San above, and returned to the ice, closed his eyes and fell asleep. It was like turning over after a good sleep, but it almost killed them. The master and the apprentice both smiled bitterly. When they entered the ice before, they were walking forward in one direction. If they wanted to retreat to the sea, they just had to retreat along the road. But just now, the dragon rolled in the sky and returned to the ground, so they didn't know which direction to go. The two stood on the dragon, stunned for a long time before they came to their senses. "Master, which direction do you think we should go?" Shen San looked at the endless ice field and held her up hesitantly. You can choose whatever you want." On the towering snow-capped mountains, gurgling springs flowed down from the heights. Under the sunlight, there was a kind of breathtaking beauty. Shen San carefully put Yunxi on the ground as if holding a fragile crystal. "Master, you wait here, I'll go get some spring water and be back soon." Yunxi nodded, jumped off his palm, and watched him squirt down at the mountain spring to get water. She walked around nearby to take a look. Suddenly, she noticed that there was a plant not far away. It was a white plant. If she hadn't been staring at it and saw something swaying when the wind blew, she wouldn't have noticed it. Seeing that the flower and the spring were not far away, she didn't tell her apprentice and rushed over excitedly. Hiss! After Yunxi explored, she raised her hand in surprise and joy, and gently touched the petals of the flower. "It's actually a golden quality herb." She took 2 steps forward and was about to take out a shovel. Looking at the flower that was taller than her, she quickly turned her head and shouted to her apprentice, "Chen San, pick this herb later. It's actually a golden quality herb. This kind of legendary level thing, even if it is given to an intern level person, will make him directly move up a level." Of course, Yunxi would not be so extravagant. Shen San filled 999 bottles of mountain spring water in his backpack, then stopped, and then filled several large jars of mountain spring water and sent them to his master. "Master, this is the spring water you asked for." Yunxi waved her hand and collected all the spring water into the space. They were really scared when they were drifting in the desert and the sea before. After arriving at the ice field, they put everything they saw into their backpacks, regardless of whether it was useful or not. Yunxi collected a lot of ice, snow, or ore. Shen San was picky and only took water and ore. After all, his backpack had limited capacity. Yunxi took out a shovel from the space and signaled him to dig the medicinal herb quickly. Just as she was walking out, she found several more golden medicinal herbs. It turns out that the ice-field continent is the origin of high-quality medicinal herbs. It's a pity that she ran all over the forest continent and didn't find anything of golden quality. But on this snowy mountain, it seems to be everywhere. Both of them were very excited, and they didn't care about hurrying on the road, and started digging on the snowy mountain. Chapter 84 Eagle's Egg. Shen-san was digging herbs excitedly. When he came to his senses, the master and apprentice had already reached the top of the mountain. Standing on the top of the mountain, looking at the bottomless place below, the two frowned. The clouds and mist blocked their sight. Shen-san threw a stone down. For a long time, there was no echo of the stone landing. The two looked at each other and quickly took a step back. Is this the cliff that the old lady said? This is too scary, isn't it? A few days ago, when they were walking on the ice field, they met a kind old lady who told them that they could go directly to the water continent by walking from this cliff. Because the water continent is a long strip, the long strip extends directly to the vicinity of the ice continent. But this cliff doesn't look like there's a place to go down. Shen-san opened the map in a flash and looked around carefully. It is indeed here. Maybe the old lady is talking about when the snow melts. The two looked at each other and made a decision in their hearts. Such a dangerous place is not suitable for them, so they should go down the mountain and take the sea route. However, things are not always as perfect as planned. Not long after the two turned around, they saw a black dot in the sky approaching very quickly, and at the same time, it made a sharp cry. The master and apprentice stood in place in tacit understanding, and looked up at the sky together. As the sound came from far away, a huge eagle spread its wings and swooped down towards the two. Chen-san, get out of the way, this guy has reached the master level. Yunxi squinted for a while, and immediately yelled, and quickly opened a protective shield. Shen-san immediately held her carefully in his arms and ran to the left at the same time. There was a cliff behind, the direction of the giant eagle in front, and a nearly empty space on the right, and only on the left, there was a cave where they could hide. However, the eagle in the sky seemed to have recognized them, and it would chase them in whichever direction they fled. The cold wind hit them hard, not only making it difficult to see the road, but also making people feel more uncomfortable. Chen-san, Yunxi, who was protected in the palm of his hand, didn't feel that uncomfortable, but he felt a little sorry for his apprentice. The eagle looked full, and it didn't seem to be hunting, but more like playing with Shen-san. Unfortunately, she was now level 10, and was no match for the eagle. As time passed, the sky gradually darkened, and Shen-san's physical strength began to fail. Seeing that he was panting more and more, she patted his hand and said, Shen-san, don't run. Anyway, I have opened the protective shield. At most, we will be kicked around by the eagle, and there will be no danger to our lives. Shen-san nodded and sat down, not wasting his energy in vain. The eagle flew down, stood in the snow and tilted its head, as if it didn't understand why they didn't move. It flapped its wings and made a look as if it wanted to drive them away. However, Shen-san sat quietly in the same place, unmoved. The eagle looked at them for a while, and suddenly became angry. It roared wildly, flapped its wings fiercely, and slapped Shen-san out. Shen-san carefully held Yunxi, and was slapped around like a ball in the protective shield. But this scene, whether in the desert or in the ocean, they have experienced countless times. Now they are no longer volatile. He yawned and hugged her to fall asleep. However, the eagle was not so easy to talk to. Seeing that Shen-san had been ignoring it, it was furious. It flapped its wings and slapped Shen-san directly into the sky. The hearts of the master and apprentice tightened at the same time. This guy. He actually slapped them towards the cliff. Yunxi was furious, looked at the eagle's nest not far away, and jumped over, using space to take away an egg. Come on, if you do something to us again, believe it or not, I will smash your egg. The master-level creature has a high IQ and can fully understand human words, so she doesn't believe that it is not afraid. However, something surprising happened. The eagle looked at the egg that she lifted with a protective shield, and there was no intention of worrying at all. The humanized eagle pupil glanced at her, as if sneering, and then slapped its wings fiercely, telling her with facts. Yes, that's right. It is not afraid at all. Yunxi looked at the strange egg and fell into the cliff in deep thought. Shen-san, who had just fallen back to the ground from the air, saw this scene, his pupils trembled, and he immediately rushed over. Master, the worried and panicked voice echoed in the cliff for a long time. Lu Yunxi looked up and saw that her apprentice was almost diving towards her, so she immediately waved her hand to disperse the protective shield. When he hugged her tightly, she felt helpless. "Shen-san, you just stay up there. With a protective shield, we will be fine." She patted his hand gently and propped up a new protective shield. "Master, how can I leave you behind?" Shen-san smiled and shook his head. The wind blew past his ears, making his face hurt. He couldn't see the surrounding environment clearly, so he could only hug her tightly, with a smile on his face. "Master, didn't I tell you? In fact, my original name was Fu Jinhen." Fu Jinhen, is this the apprentice's name in the real world? Tick tick. What's this sound? Is that the sound of water? Lu Yunxi opened her eyes and saw the scene of water drops falling from above. She blinked and got up from the ground. This is a valley, which is very similar to the drain at the doorstep of her home in Mushroom Village. A stream meanders through it, but there are not many trees around, and there are more green grass. Shen-san was lying beside her, half of his body was soaked in the stream. Fortunately, he was protected from suffocation by the protective shield. She used all her strength to finally pull Shen-san out of the stream, and used a blood recovery skill on him. Then she sat down panting, took out some dry food, and thought about where to go later. "Master," Shen-san opened his eyes blankly, "where is this?" "It doesn't look like the ice continent." Lu Yunxi nodded, gave him a steamed bun, and asked him to eat while talking. "I guess we have come to the water continent. Did the old lady we met before say that we can go directly to the water continent from the cliff?" This is a blessing in disguise. She had seen it on the forum a long time ago. The ice continent is all ice and snow, with plants and minerals, but not green grass like this. Shen-san said vaguely while eating, "So the way the old lady said is to jump directly from the cliff, maybe, who knows?" After Lu Yunxi finished eating, he clapped his hands, took out the bird eggs in the space, and began to study them. "It's really strange. The master-level eagle can definitely understand what I say, but I took away the eggs in its nest. Why is it not afraid at all?" He washed his hands after eating and came over. Looking at the huge egg, he knocked it gently, picked it up and shook it, a little suspicious. "Speaking of which, is the eagle's egg this big? Is it very big?" "But this eagle is already very big. This egg is almost half the size of an eagle." Shen-san gestured with his hands and nodded affirmatively. "Huh? I thought, then this is probably not an eagle's egg. She has become too small now, and everything she sees seems to be huge." So when she saw this egg, although she felt it was very big, she didn't notice any problems at all. The two of them surrounded the huge egg and fell into deep thought. "Shen-san, why don't you take this egg? Don't many adventurers also raise some pets?" Lu Yunxi suggested. "In fact, the game has always had a pet system, and you can raise it at any time. It's just that players can only find some rabbits, squirrels, etc., which are troublesome, time-consuming and material-consuming to raise, and their combat effectiveness is still very weak. But this egg looks so big, and after exploring it, it turns out to be 3 question marks, so it should be a better battle pet. Master, you should keep the egg, right?" After thinking for a moment, he rejected her offer. "You are smaller now, and your fighting power is not strong enough. It will be much easier to have a pet to help you. No, if I want to tame the pet, I must be stronger than this guy, otherwise it will run away and we will miss it." She could only tame the pet step by step, and she had to control the pet by herself. It was not like the player, who could control the pet with one button. Chapter 85 Doubt. After players bind, the worst case scenario is that the pet's favorability is not high and it is unwilling to help, but the pet will not run away. Shen-san couldn't persuade Lu Yunxi, and finally took the egg and put it in the pet system to hatch. What he thought in his heart was that when he hatched the battle pet inside, he would give it to the master after training, so that the master would not have to worry about danger. After finishing the plan in his mind, he looked at the hatching time, and the smile on the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. It actually takes a month to hatch. Lu Yunxi was also a little surprised, and then he became more expectant in his heart. It seems that the things in this egg are incredible. Pets like rabbits can hatch in half a day at most. After watching for a while, the two picked up some food and medicinal materials nearby, and then set off again, walking deep into the continent. After walking for half an hour, they saw more and more lakes and pools, and they could even be said to be densely distributed around. The environment here is quite similar to the forest continent, except that there are more trees on the forest continent, and more water here. Is it autumn now? Leaves are falling all the time. At first, she didn't see any trees, so she hadn't noticed it. However, the further she walked into the continent, the more bare trees she saw. I heard that the scenery in different seasons is different in different continents. It's normal that it's autumn here. Shen-san pushed away the branches blocking the road with his hands and walked carefully on the path. There are too many pools here, and the path in the middle is not big. Sometimes you will fall into the pool if you are not careful. Just now, he fell in with the wrong eye. Fortunately, the master's protective shield was strong enough, so he didn't become a drowned chicken. The two didn't have a map of this place, so they had to keep walking in one direction. After walking for most of the day, they finally saw a different scenery. Master, look, there is a big lake in front, and there is a house in the middle. Shen-san pointed to the small house in the middle of the lake, his face full of excitement. Finally I can see people. He carefully held her and trotted over. However, before they took out the boat, they heard a familiar voice. Ding, welcome to the pond copy. The two of them flashed in front of their eyes and entered a new space. Looking at the fish-like monster that suddenly appeared in front of them, the two fell into silence. Did they say that everyone had been looking for a long time and couldn't find a new copy? Did they say that copies are very rare and hard to find? How come they just ran 2 steps and entered the copy? The two were confused for a while before they calmed down. Yunxi jumped into the corner of the boat, and Shen-san picked up the wooden paddle and started rowing towards the only house in the center of the lake. In this lake where the shore is invisible, the lake is unusually quiet. He paddled hard for a long time, and suddenly ripples appeared on the calm lake surface. The master and apprentice were instantly alert. A second later, the water waves burst open with a puff, and a huge fish monster emerged from the lake. Although the fish monster looks like a fish, it has a red blood strip on its head, and its teeth are like the sharp teeth of sharks in cartoons. And its fierce eyes stare at them. Shen-san drew out the giant sword and said, "Master, be careful on the boat," and then jumped into the water with a plop and fought with the shark. Yunxi looked at his action, twitched her eyes, and a row of black lines slid down her forehead. In the past, she only taught her apprentice to cook, but she never paid attention to how her apprentice fought monsters. At that time, it felt cool to watch close combat, but when they encountered this kind of monster in the water, they had to go into the water, and it was particularly troublesome to fight. Shen-san had a protective shield and could breathe in the water, but he was affected by the water pressure in the water and was far less flexible than the fish. The fish dodged left and right and easily dodged his attack. Yunxi could only stand on the boat and watch, and occasionally restore Shen-san's blood. After all, even if she wanted to attack now, she couldn't lift her bow and arrow. But you don't need to hold up a weapon to restore blood. Shen-san was indeed restricted in fighting. The fish has a high agility, but he almost put all his attributes on strength, which made it very inconvenient to move his hands. After a whole hour of dawdling, Shen-san finally finished beating this fish monster. He sat on the boat, rubbed his sore arms, ate a few buns, and waited for his strength to recover. The first fish monster is level 60, and the levels of the monsters behind will definitely get higher and higher. Yunxi crossed her arms and analyzed with a serious face. "Chen-san, if you can't beat it later, let's give up." Chen-san was drinking water. Hearing this, his hand holding the bottle paused slightly and looked at him in surprise. "You should insist on what you should insist on, and you should also let go when you should give up." She walked forward and patted his left hand on the ground. "Giving up also requires courage. When we become stronger in the future, it will be the same when we come again." Her eyes were full of tenderness and tolerance, and there was also a little encouragement. However, Chen-san did not struggle with the question of whether to give up as she imagined. "But master, how do you know this fish monster is level 60? His eyes were full of doubt, and his voice was full of disbelief, staring at her closely. Yunxi's original smile almost froze, but fortunately, she had a strong heart and managed to keep the gentle smile on her face. If it weren't for her heart beating wildly, she really couldn't tell that there was anything wrong with her. Fortunately, she is still a little girl. Even if her heart beats restlessly or violently, Shen-san has not yet reached the master level and cannot sense her abnormality. She tilted her head, looking as if she didn't know what he was talking about. "Yes, after entering the secret realm, there is a level 60 symbol on the head of the fish monster. Can't you see it, apprentice?" At the end, her tone became nervous and she looked at him with worry, as if she was worried that something had happened to him. Looking at the master's appearance, Shen-san retracted his suspicious gaze and thought, Could it be that he really made a mistake? Just at that moment, he suspected that the master was not an NPC, but a player. That's right. I heard that some NPCs are played by players themselves. I wonder if the master is in the same situation? He lowered his head and a light flashed in his eyes. Let's test it later. When he raised his head, he laughed heartily as usual. I thought you couldn't see that, master. What are you talking about? She smiled and waved her hand. I just became smaller. There's nothing wrong with my eyes. Shen-san smiled, rode for a while, and encountered a new fish monster. The two of them started the mode of him killing monsters and her recovering blood again. The fish monsters behind were also upgraded almost level by level, level 61, level 62. Shen-san was also constantly upgrading because of killing monsters, so far, he has never failed. But these are just trivial matters to her. The trouble is that Shen-san seems to have begun to doubt her and always tests her from time to time. Shen-san, master, when can you enter the dungeon? Yunxi, what is a dungeon? Oh, you mean the secret realm. You can always enter, but most of the secret realms are controlled by the sects. Shen-san, master, what flavor of nutritional supplement do you like to drink? I think the sweet and sour flavor is the most unpalatable. Yunxi, what is a nutritional supplement? Shen-san, master, let me tell you a joke. When a person is sailing in the interstellar, he finds, I don't understand it at all. Seeing that her expression was very confused and she didn't seem to be pretending at all, Shen-san gradually dispelled his doubts about his master. Maybe the NPCs in the setting of ancient times are so smart, right? Unintentional planting leads to a good result. The apprentice told a joke about the interstellar era, and she didn't understand it at all, and she successfully got rid of her suspicion. Yunxi originally thought that if Shen-san kept testing her like this, she would find a way to get rid of this apprentice and go out alone. She secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Anyway, it would be good if the apprentice didn't bother testing herself every day. He hadn't even finished this instance yet, and he had tried N times. If it weren't for the fact that she wasn't really an interstellar person and didn't know their jokes, she might have been discovered long ago. The instance was advancing all the way. However, when they saw the scene in front of them, their faces couldn't help but sink. The big fish monster had the words LV 70 on its head, its fangs flashing coldly, and it swam happily in the water. Chapter 86 Level 86 Master Fish Monster. Facing the level 70 fish monster, Shen-san almost subconsciously blocked her behind him. Master, there is no way to exit the dungeon now. Leave the secret realm. However, Yunxi was only 10 centimeters tall at this time, so he could not stop her. She stood behind Shen-san, holding her forward with a black line, and quickly released two protective shields with her other hand, protecting two people respectively. Shen-san, be careful. She stood in the center of the ship with a solemn face. The apprentice is now stuck at level 69. In fact, only when you really exceed level 70 can you be considered a master level. It just so happens that level 70 can only be considered a quasi-master level, but the apprentice is stuck at level 69. The gap between the peak of the advanced level and the quasi-master level seems small, but the strength is very different. In fact, she is not optimistic about her apprentice, but it is not good to pour cold water on her at this time. Because now, they are indeed stuck in the dungeon and cannot be forced to exit. Shen-san could still be forced offline, but she... Swish, a fish mouth as big as a shark opened, and a stream of water shot out of its mouth, spraying straight at the two. Yunxi quickly dodged and jumped into the center of the boat to avoid the attack. Although Shen-san in the water dodged in time, it was inconvenient to move in the water, and his legs were tripped. His face stiffened for a moment, and he fell into the depths of the water. Shen-san, she subconsciously covered her face, unable to bear to watch this scene. The fish monster seemed to sneer, and then proudly swam away with its tail. After waiting for a long time, Shen-san did not get up. Yunxi also changed from being calm and composed at the beginning to being anxious later. She turned on the system, watched the time pass, crossed her chest with her hands, kept shaking her feet, and her anxiety became heavier and heavier. What's going on? It's been almost half an hour. Even if you fall into a cesspool, you should climb out. The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she became. She took off her shawl and jumped into the lake with a splash. The lake was much deeper than she had imagined, but fortunately the water was clear and she could see clearly. She held her breath and concentrated her mind, looking around constantly while swimming madly. Master, suddenly, a familiar voice came. Yunxi was slightly startled, and turned her head to see Shen San, who was not far away, swimming towards her with a look of joy. Her tense mind suddenly relaxed, and then a burst of anger rushed up. This guy! Don't you know that he will be worried? After staying at the bottom of the lake for so long, she thought he was in trouble. Fortunately, she jumped down in a hurry. Master, look, what did I find at the bottom of the lake? Shen San smiled, and put his hands together, as if he was wrapping something. What? Cough. Yunxi forgot that she was still in the water, and choked and coughed twice, and a large amount of lake water rushed into her mouth and nose. The painful feeling of suffocation made her eyes roll back in an instant. Master, Shen San was shocked and immediately reached out to hug her, so that she didn't fall further. Gently stroking her back with his index finger, watching her coughing non-stop, he sighed helplessly. Master, why didn't you put on a protective shield for yourself? It's too risky to go directly into the water. Yunxi, who had finally recovered, froze. Yes, how could she forget that she still had the protective shield? But she jumped directly into the water, making herself embarrassed. Besides, she also put a protective shield on her apprentice. Even if a master-level monster came, it would be useless to her apprentice. She couldn't help but raise her hand and pat her head. She was really confused. Yunxi recovered and sat cross-legged in his palm. Just when she was about to ask him what he had just discovered, she felt Shen San's hand tremble. What's wrong? Is there danger again? She turned her head and saw that the tip of her apprentice's ears were actually stained red, and her cheeks were also lightly pink. He raised his head and stared at the direction of the sky. She looked at her apprentice in confusion. What's wrong with this guy? Why does he look so strange? Master, he held him in his hands, and although he was talking to her, he didn't look at her at all, but talked to the sky. Do you want to find a place to change clothes? Yunxi looked down and saw that her clothes were soaked in water and were completely wet. They stuck to her body tightly, outlining her figure perfectly. The most terrifying thing was that after the clothes were wet, they became translucent. She could see the looming scenery inside by lowering her head slightly. Her heart tightened, and she immediately took out the small shed she had built before, went in and changed herself into a dry set of clothes, and covered herself tightly with a shawl, and then returned to Shen San. Master, do we really have to dig all these away? Shen San looked at the medicinal herbs that were glowing at the bottom of the lake and asked with some stammering. The copy can be refreshed infinitely, not because of the fear of exhausting the pond. He was afraid that he would not be able to finish digging, even after a day and a night. Unlike picking wild vegetables can be done by just using a sickle to cut them, but the roots of this medicinal herb can also be used as medicine, so you need to be very careful to dig them out. What? You don't want to dig? Yunxi was originally embarrassed, but when he heard his apprentice's words, all his miscellaneous thoughts were immediately thrown away. But this is what you discovered. This kind of medicinal herb can be used to make a potion that increases strength. If you don't want it, forget it. Wait, he was stunned for a moment, and then looked at her with surprise and joy. Master, are you serious? Can it increase strength? Then master, if you eat it, won't you become stronger? He looked at the medicinal herbs around him, as if he saw some great treasure, his eyes sparkling. She paused, and the subtle dissatisfaction in her heart suddenly dissipated completely, and she found a place to sit down casually. This thing is only useful for you adventurers, but not for us, huh? Shen San was confused. Seeing that the master looked similar to them, he thought that the things that the players could use, the master could also use. What a pity. Finally, Shen San dug up all the herbs under her instructions. After all, these were orange-grade herbs. It was rare to see them piled up here like they were everywhere. It would be a pity if they were not taken away. After that, the two of them stayed at the bottom of the lake. The fish monster did not come to disturb them. There were only the two of them and the small flowers emitting white light in the entire lake bottom world. Every night, the sky was dark, and the flowers at the bottom of the lake glowed faintly, looking extremely beautiful. Shen San was busy digging herbs. Yunxi used this oil at the bottom of the lake and some other materials to build medicine cauldrons, equipment, etc. After making several medicine cauldrons of different sizes, she started to refine herbs directly at the bottom of the lake. Master, what kind of medicine are you refining? Shen San looked at her skillful movements and was no longer surprised. Her master was omnipotent and knew everything. Even if the master said that she knew all the life skills, he would not be surprised. Lu Yunxi didn't know what her apprentice was thinking, so she casually replied, "Yes, I'm refining a pill for you that can help you break through to the master level. But this is also my first time making this kind of pill, and I don't know if it will succeed." She frowned, stared at the medicinal materials in front of her, and exhaled deeply. "Master, don't be nervous, I believe you will succeed." He smiled immediately. "There is nothing in this world that can stump the master." She looked at him unexpectedly. She didn't expect that in the eyes of her apprentice, she was so awesome. Then she smiled proudly again. "Don't worry, I can do it." After all, if she didn't find a way to help her apprentice break through, the two of them would probably be stuck in the stem dungeon for a year. The supplies they had previously stored were not enough for them to use for a year. After Lu Yunxi finished speaking, she once again devoted herself to pharmaceutical research. Time passed as the two of them were busy. That day, when Shen San was cooking, he suddenly smelled a strange fragrance coming from next door. He paused and curiously leaned over. "I saw the small medicine cauldron in front of the master vibrating, and the smell in the cauldron became stronger and stronger, covering up the aroma of his cooking." Chapter 87 Breakthrough. After a violent shaking, the medicine cauldron gradually calmed down. Lu Yunxi opened the lid of the medicine cauldron and saw 5 round white pills neatly placed inside. They were still shining with crystal light. Shen San came over in surprise and stared at the 5 round pills carefully. "Master, is this the pill?" Although he was an intern-level pharmacist, the difficulty of making pills was far greater than that of making potions. He didn't even understand potions, so he naturally wouldn't study more complicated pills. Even so far, he was the first player to see a pill. "Yes, this is the breakthrough pill for you." Lu Yunxi counted the pills inside, put them into the medicine bottle, and handed it to him. "The pills I made are relatively small, and 5 pills are equivalent to a normal-sized pill. You will swallow them all later." Shen San asked about the usage, then found an open space to sit cross-legged. After taking the pill, he calmed his mind and carefully felt the internal force in his body. Lu Yunxi sat beside him, watching seriously. Half a day later, Shen San's internal force changed, as if it had materialized, and layers of ripples spread over his body. Lu Yunxi, who had almost fallen asleep, suddenly opened her eyes and quickly put a protective shield on both of them, and then stepped back a little to let him play freely. Unlike the feeling of natural success when she broke through the master level before, when the player broke through the master level, in addition to the ripples at the beginning, there were circles of halos flashing on his body, which looked extremely dazzling. After taking a look, she dared not look at it again, and quickly lowered her HUD to avoid hurting her eyes. Tisk tisk, the effect of the player is different. When upgrading, it is so dazzling. Unlike when they upgraded, it was so ordinary. There was only a little fluctuation in the internal force on his body. The dazzling beam lasted for about 5 minutes. When she could no longer feel the light around her even with her eyes closed, she asked tentatively, "Shen San, did you succeed?" "Master, I succeeded." As the voice rang out, Lu Yunxi felt that she was being lifted up. The smile on his face was very bright, like a young boy, refreshing and handsome, throwing her high up, and then continuing, repeating this way. Lu Yunxi felt like riding a roller coaster. Or the kind without a seat belt. "Great. Now we can get rid of the fish monster outside." She couldn't help laughing, with joy in the corners of her eyes and eyebrows. The bottom of the lake is indeed beautiful, but no matter how beautiful the place is, she is tired of seeing it after so many days. And after digging out these glowing medicinal herbs, the bottom of the lake has become dark and boring. Shen San held her in one hand and slowly paddled upwards with the other hand. When they were about the center of the lake, the two saw the familiar fish monster. The fish monster was very human. When he saw them, he paused for a moment, as if thinking about something. When the two returned to the boat, the fish monster seemed to remember them, rushed in front of them, and sprayed a mouthful of water. "Humph!" Lu Yunxi put his hands on his waist and snorted coldly, raised his hands and shouted with great momentum, "Go!" Shen San had already changed into the best equipment. Hearing this, he rushed forward in one step and slashed at the fish monster fiercely with a knife. As a quasi-master, Shen San's agility points were not high, but in the case of sprinting, the fish monster did not have time to dodge. Rip, the giant sword fell fiercely, cutting the body of the fish, and water splashed up. The fish monster twisted its body in pain and rolled in the water. Then, its eyes became fierce, staring at Shen San fiercely. and rushed towards Shen-san at a high speed. At this time, Shen-san was no longer a wuxia and raised the giant sword to collide with it. This face-to-face way of winning by strength made Yunxi a little stunned. Shen-san is good at fighting with strength, but the fish monster actually chose to win by strength, which she did not expect. Is it really mad? Seeing that Shen-san's surface was intact, it was clear that this fish monster was not a powerful monster at all. Yunxi stood by and saw that her apprentice would not be hurt by it, so she sat on the boat with a relieved heart and tinkered with her own things. She had just finished a meal, and Shen-san finally defeated the difficult fish monster and passed the dungeon. Master, I got a bow and arrow. Don't you use a bow and arrow? Shen-san held a box and gave it to her as if he was holding a treasure. You should keep this bow and arrow. You can use it after it recovers. Yunxi looked at his rare excitement and curiously looked at it. Only then did she find that what was in front of her was actually a gold-grade bow and arrow. There are too many gold-quality things recently, right? Or, except for the forest continent, there are many gold-quality things in other places. If that's the case, it would be too unfriendly to the people of the forest continent. But soon Shen-san explained, golden quality weapons are very rare. This is the first time I have seen one. Master, you must keep it well. If it is stolen, there will be no next one. Although the two had obtained a lot of gold items before, most of them were food and medicinal materials, and the better ones were equipment, but weapons were the first time they were seen. Shen-san, do you feel a little cold? Yunxi pulled the shawl tighter, covering her whole body, and huddled in his neck. The moment Shen-san came out of the dungeon, he also felt a chill going straight into his bones, and he shivered. He immediately opened his backpack, took out a thick piece of clothing from it, wrapped himself tightly, and then asked the people around him, Master, if you are cold, do you want to stay in the bag of my clothes? It should be warmer there. Yunxi lowered her head, looked at the pocket on his chest, and shook her head to refuse. It is obviously an ancient-style game, but the pockets of the clothes are more like modern people. Well, in fact, she doesn't know where the ancients sewed the pockets. Isn't it said that there are purses? Maybe the clothes of ancient people didn't have pockets at all? Anyway, she was really embarrassed to go to the pocket on the chest. It's better for me to be here, I can see more clearly. Seeing that the master refused, he pulled his clothes tighter, avoided the direction of the house in the middle of the lake, and walked forward in a random direction. As they walked, the wind became stronger and stronger, almost the same as the blizzard they encountered in the ice continent. The only difference was that there was no snow. The two of them braved the strong wind, from the beginning of walking fast, to later moving forward step by step with difficulty. After walking hard for an hour, the two finally saw the smoke rising slowly not far away. Master, there is a house ahead, let's go and take a look. Dong 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 here, who is it? An old man's voice sounded in the house. After a panic-stricken cough, the door slowly opened. Who are you? The old man trembled and supported the door, slowly raised his head, and a pair of turbid eyes on his old face floated slightly. Yunxi hid in Shen-san's neck without showing her head, and knocked on Shen-san, hinting him not to tell her about herself. For some reason, she always felt uncomfortable when she saw this old man. Old man, I came from the neighboring ice continent. I accidentally fell off the cliff that day. When I woke up, I walked a long way before I found this village. Shen-san smiled politely. Excuse me, where's this place? This is a village. Our village has no name, because the village is too small and too far away from the town. No strangers come here all year round. The old man shook his head tremblingly, and spoke incoherently. If you want to leave here, it's best to leave after winter. It's so cold, it's going to snow soon. Excuse me, where's the nearest town? If I want to stay, the nearest town to our village is about 3 months away. I remember that the last time I went to the city was more than 10 years ago. The old man squinted his eyes and raised his head as if recalling the past. A complicated look flashed in his eyes. He sighed, and looked at Shen-san again. Young man, if you want to stay, you can live in the guest room on the west side, but there is nothing to eat in our village. You can only find it on your own. Chapter 88 Sold. Shen-san took out a large box of food from his backpack and expressed his gratitude to the old man who took him in. It's great that you are willing to let me stay here. Thank you very much. This is the food I collected before. It's not particularly expensive. I give it to you. The old man looked at the large box of things and reached into the bag. When he found several large bags of food inside, tears welled up in his eyes. Okay. You can stay as long as you want." After saying goodbye to the old man, Shen-san went into the west room, cleaned it up briefly and went to bed. Yunxi jumped to his side, too lazy to clean up, and fell asleep directly. The next day, Shen-san recovered his spirits and took Yunxi with him to take a walk to the edge of the village. Of course, he was walking and she was watching from the side. It seemed that it snowed heavily last night. When they were walking, the village was already covered in silver. "Master, are we going to wait here until spring before setting off?" Yunxi only showed a pair of eyes outside, looking at the deserted surroundings, frowning. "This village gives me a bad feeling. Let's leave quickly." The two discussed and decided to stay in the village for 2 more days before leaving. During these 2 days, they dug more snow and put it in their backpacks. In case they can't find water when they go out to sea, the snow can be used as water after it melts. That afternoon, the old man learned of Shen-san's plan and came to help dig snow. "Old man, this is too hard." Although the old man looked thin and weak, he was very stubborn. Even though he was trembling all the time, he insisted on helping him shovel snow. Even though he didn't know what Shen-san wanted the snow for. Shen-san couldn't watch the old man helping, so he had to pretend to dig it himself. "Okay, I've dug it," he said excitedly, and then looked at the old man with gratitude. "Thank you so much for helping me so much." The old man saw him collect the snow, and then he smiled and nodded. "I'm glad I can help you. You gave me so much food, I can't just accept it for nothing." He and the old man chatted with each other for a few more words, and gave the old man some dry food. Time soon came to night. When Shen-san went to bed, he found that the master was not sleeping, but frowning, wondering what he was thinking. "Master, are you worried about your aunt?" He warmed himself by the fire, waited until his hands and feet were warm before climbing onto the bed, and gently stroked her back. "Don't worry, we will find her soon." Yunxi was not prepared for his hand, and she didn't stand firmly, and fell onto the bed. "I'm not worried about my aunt." She smiled helplessly and lowered her eyes. "I don't know why, but I feel very uneasy, as if a storm is coming." She looked a little depressed, lying on the bed. Her chubby face was rarely listless. "Maybe it's my illusion." Shen-san couldn't stand the depressed look of his master, so he immediately comforted her. "Master, don't worry, I'm here for everything." He pulled up the quilt and covered his master carefully, stroking her back with his fingers. His eyebrows and eyes were full of tenderness under the firelight. "Don't worry, master, no matter what happens, I will protect you." Yunxi listened to the gentle voice of her apprentice, looked at his gentle and comforting face, and her mind gradually relaxed. Forget it. She shouldn't think about too many problems at the 10th level now. If the sky falls, there's still the tall apprentice to support it. The night gradually deepened. The blizzard outside the window began to rage, the north wind was howling, and the fire in the house flickered quietly in the translucent ball, bringing waves of warmth. The rustling sound approached. In the night, the person on the bed suddenly opened his eyes, and the warm fire disappeared in an instant, leaving only a silent darkness. There was a loud bang. "Fool, be careful, you make such a big noise even when you climb over the wall, you are really useless." "Where's the person?" "Which room?" "I heard it's the person in the west room, a single man, who looks quite strong. Everyone be careful when the time comes, so as not to be hurt by him." Yunxi opened her sleepy eyes and listened to the voices of the people outside, a little speechless. Level 10. She is only level 10 now. She can easily hear the movement outside, not to mention Shen-san who has already risen to the master level. How weak is the guy outside? She was a little confused. However, Shen-san also noticed that she woke up, and quickly stretched out his finger and gently tapped her back. "Master, you can sleep peacefully, they are just a bunch of minions, I will deal with them." His voice was very light, and it made people feel more sleepy in the night. She was too lazy to think about it, nodded, and snuggled into the quilt. In a daze, she felt that the person next to her went out for a while, and then came back, blowing a gust of cold wind. The sunlight shone through the window lattice on the face of the person on the bed. The light and shadow were a bit dazzling, and the face of the person who was sleeping soundly moved subconsciously, trying to avoid the annoying light, but found that he couldn't avoid it. Yunxi stretched out her hand to block the light, and sat up with messy hair. "Master, are you awake?" Shen-san walked in against the light, holding 2 plates in his hands, which exuded bursts of fragrance. "Come for breakfast. Today I made pork and cabbage pancakes, fried eggs, and pork bone soup noodles. What do you want to eat? How about a little bit of everything?" As a person with decision-making difficulties, it is simply wonderful for someone to prepare breakfast and bring it to her. She immediately jumped out of bed, scooped some hot snow water outside the door to wipe her face, and then jumped back to the table after washing her face. In order to make it more convenient for her to eat, a lot of bowls, spoons, chopsticks, and even tables and chairs were made along the way. Shen-san carefully divided her breakfast and brought it to her special small table. The two sat down and enjoyed a wonderful breakfast together. After eating, she asked about what happened last night. The people who came last night are people from the village. It is said that they saw that we were generous and wanted to rob us, Shen-san explained helplessly while washing the dishes. People from the village? Who? The only people they had really spoken to in the village were the elderly people who were staying with them. The other villagers basically just nodded and smiled. How did they know that they were generous? He nodded, confirming her guess. Just as you thought, the old man of our family brought everyone in the village to rob us. Yunxi twitched her eyes. Are they crazy? Everyone in the village came to rob us. I went to ask around. He shook his head, a complex look in his eyes. I heard that the whole village has been relying on robbing others for a living. There were still people coming here before, but there have been fewer and fewer people here over the years, so they can't wait to come and cause trouble for us. She was speechless, but when she turned around, she suddenly thought of the problem she had discovered. By the way, I found that there seemed to be no women and children in the village. Can you ask what's going on? As she spoke, she thought of some bad things, her face sank, and her voice became cold. When they are hungry, won't they kill their wives and children? Shen-san was frightened by her cruel imagination. He paused before looking at her hesitantly. It should not be that serious, right? He went to the main house and questioned the large group of villagers who were tied up separately. When he returned to the west room, his expression was still very strange. Yunxi raised his eyebrows, and the light in his eyes became more and more fierce. Why? Are they really so cruel? He shook his head and sighed. Master, I asked, because the people here are too poor. They can't afford to support women, so every few decades, they go out to buy a few women to give birth to children for them. What about those women? A cold light flashed in her eyes, but her tone became softer. They sold them. Looking at the master's unbelievable eyes, he continued to say, they will sell the women after they give birth to the children, and sell them to the houses of wealthy families to cook and so on. Sold. Really? She took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. What about their children? I haven't seen any children in the village. They didn't sell the children too, right? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, Can't Eat Meat. Generally speaking, they would not sell their children, but there was a famine a few years ago, and the villagers almost starved to death, so they sold their children in exchange for food, so now they can't see their children. Shen-san looked at his master's increasingly gloomy expression, and his voice became smaller and smaller. What did the people in this village do? He actually made his master, who was so good-tempered, angry. Shen-san received a large reward for sending a group of robbers to the government. He tossed the reward silver and said happily, Master, there is actually a reward. Let's go find a restaurant to eat something good. People passing by were surprised to see this scene. A tall man in his 20s actually called the girl sitting in a stroller master. Is this guy crazy? Does the child in the stroller really have some magical powers? I've said it before, don't make a stroller. This weird car has only been made for a few years? Someone is crazy. Yunxi listened to the people around her pointing and talking, twitched her eyes, and covered her face helplessly. Let's go. Shen-san didn't care what the people around him said, and took her to the largest restaurant with a happy face. In the lobby, the two of them ate while listening to the people around them. Have you heard? Many martial arts masters have appeared in Huzhou recently. Your news is out of date. It should be said that a treasure appeared in Huzhou. That's why so many people rush to Huzhou. I don't know what the treasure is. It even alarmed people from major academies. Huzhou? The two who were eating subconsciously pricked up their ears. According to the information obtained by Shen-san, her aunt should be in Huzhou. Unexpectedly, when they were just about to go to Huzhou, so many people from the martial arts world suddenly appeared. The two looked at each other and saw the helplessness in their eyes. After such a long journey, The two have fallen in love with the ordinary life and are not interested in such ups and downs. As for the treasures, they ignored them. Haven't they encountered enough treasures along the way? Not only are there orange-grade ones, but there are also many gold-grade materials. Yunxi gestured to the plate of meat. Shen-san immediately understood her eyes, picked up a piece of thinly sliced meat, and put it to her mouth. However, the next second, his hand was blocked by someone. Yunxi looked at the meat stretched to her mouth and quickly stretched out her mouth to take it. Unfortunately, the piece of meat didn't seem far away, and it was just 2 centimeters away from her mouth. Her chubby little face became fierce. The master and apprentice turned their heads at the same time and looked at the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared beside them. "You kid, is this your first time being a father?" The middle-aged man sighed, shaking his head and sighing. "Don't you even know such simple common sense? Your child is only 1 year old, and he can't eat such a large piece of meat." At this point, the middle-aged man suddenly became proud, sat down next to Shen-san, and talked about the stories of raising children in the past. "Speaking of which, this year-old children are just cute. They don't eat much, just feed them a little goat milk every day." Yunxi had a wooden face, listening to the man talking to Shen-san non-stop, and she could only look at the dishes on the table. And she was so depressed. After all, she is only a 1-year-old child now. How scary it would be if she jumped onto the table at this moment. Shen-san held back his laughter, and after sending the middle-aged man away, he put away the dishes. The two found a deserted place to fill their stomachs, and then officially set off. Among all the continents, the water continent and the forest continent are the 2 largest continents. The small island is the smallest, and the other continents are of medium size. Huzhou is at the northernmost part of the water continent, and their current location is basically at the southernmost part. If they want to cross the entire continent, it will take 1 or 2 months at the speed of Shen-san alone. "Maybe it will be summer when we get there." Shen-san wrapped her whole body tightly with a blanket, and then pushed the stroller and walked slowly forward. Yunxi looked at the ice outside that was beginning to thaw, and was about to agree, but the next second she felt sleepy. She closed her eyes and leaned against the stroller activity. "Yes, there's a food tasting competition in our city today, and the top 3 in the competition will have prizes." Passers-by looked at the square with envy. "You don't know, last year's reward was a full year of free meal coupons." Shen-san raised his eyebrows. "That's great, why don't you participate?" However, although he agreed with it, he didn't think so in his heart. It was just a year's meal coupons. This reward was not attractive at all. "Yes, in our water continent, no matter which city you are in, you can take the meal coupon to eat, and it's all free." The passerby sighed. "It's a pity that I have never won. It's really too difficult, otherwise I must try." Yunxi and Shen-san didn't take the passerby's words to heart. However, the crowd was too crowded. In the crowd's pushing, Shen-san not only did not stay away from the crowd, but came to the activity in the middle. The host standing on the stage saw them, first with a look of surprise, and then his eyes lit up. "Friends present, did you see it? It's so surprising. Today, there is actually a dad with a child. Our inn's activities are really popular. Even with children, they have to take the trouble to come and participate." The host talked to himself, walked to Shen-san, turned his head and looked at him. "Excuse me, sir, is this your child? You took the trouble to come out with your child to participate in the event. Is it to realize your dream?" Shen-san, almost forced to participate in this event, he inexplicably participated in it. Yunxi was standing nearby, laughing. The brothers, sisters, aunts, and other women nearby came over, pinching her face and making faces. "What a cute child. I want to steal her away. Is it a boy or a girl? She's so pretty. How can this child be so lovable? Her little expression is so funny." Shen-san saw that his master was surrounded by the weird ants, and laughed secretly for a long time before he rescued him. After the master and apprentice got on the stage, the enthusiastic ants around them were stopped by the event staff. The two secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In such a mess, the competition on the stage officially began. Shen-san looked at the bowl of soup in the middle of the stage and fell into confusion. "Please come up one by one, and feel it. Guess how many kinds of ingredients are put in this bowl of soup." The host said the rules with a smile. "Those who guess correctly will get the reward of our first round. If no one guesses correctly, then the person who is closest to the answer will get the reward." In order, Shen-san went over to smell the smell, then took a small sip, and returned to the stage with a blank face. He looked at the endless stream of people on the stage and fell into deep thought. After thinking for a long time, he was still wavering in his heart, so he turned his head to look at Lu Yunxi in the stroller. "Master, what do you think?" Lu Yunxi understood his eyes, but did not answer him, and drank the goat milk by herself. What a joke. Not to mention that she is just a baby now, and she has been staying in the stage all the time, at least 50 meters away from the bowl of soup on the stage. Even if she is a master chef, she is also an ordinary person and can only smell a little bit of it. Maybe she can guess a few of the ingredients, but if she wants to find out everything, she has to go and taste it herself. Shen San looked away aggrievedly, and after thinking hard for a long time, he submitted his answer. Let us congratulate the winner of the first level, Mr. Shen San. The host stood on the stage with an excited tone, holding a cup made of gold, and gave it to Shen San. Congratulations on winning the prize of the first level, the gold cup. Shen San took the cup made of pure gold and smiled at the people in the audience until his eyes were almost invisible. The audience around him also cheered. Lu Yunxi, the subsequent levels are all played in the same way, all of which are directly asking people to guess what ingredients are in the soup, and they need to specifically report the names of the ingredients. The first place in each level can get 3 points, the second place 2 points, and so on. There are no points after the fourth place. There are a total of 10 levels. The person with the highest total score is the winner of this competition and can get a year's meal coupon. Of course, accommodation is also free. The rewards for the second and third place are shorter, only half a year. Chapter 90 Children. Under Lu Yunxi's instruction, Shen San's cooking skills have reached a very good level. Although he has not broken through the master level, he is also at the peak of the advanced level. Moreover, she has a lot of various strange and bizarre ingredients on hand, plus some new ingredients found on the road. It can be said that he has eaten and cooked most of the ingredients in the world. In the end, Shen San was honored to win the first place. Standing in the middle of the crowd, he smiled so hard that his teeth were not visible. "Master, kid," Shen San waved the prize in front of her excitedly. "This is the prize for the first place." Seeing that the apprentice looked like he was asking for praise, she smiled and nodded. Just as she was about to praise him, she saw the aunties around her surrounded her, so she had to shut up. "Strange, why do you call your kid kid? Doesn't your kid have a name?" Shen San thought to himself. How else would he call him? Could he call him master? How can a man take care of a child, and not even give it a name? This is too outrageous. How can you be a father? This kind of furry quilt cannot cover the mouth. The child will be unable to breathe. Lu Yunxi looked at the apprentice surrounded by the ants, and a touch of sympathy flashed in his eyes. Looking at the ants who began to chatter, Shen San also broke out in a cold sweat. Hearing that someone else said that he was the master's father, and seeing the strange expression on the master's face, he was so nervous that he almost knelt down. "Ants, please don't hurt him. How can he be the master's father?" Lu Yunxi looked at Shen San, who was rarely at a loss, and felt a little funny and helpless. She cried twice, pursed her lips, and her eyes were full of tears. Shen San breathed a sigh of relief and immediately picked up Lu Yunxi. Although it was a bit embarrassing, he kept rocking her, looking like he was coaxing a baby. However, he just held her and said nothing. The aunties next to him couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly urged him, "Why don't you talk to comfort her? Call her baby." Baby." His expression was very distorted, and he squeezed out these words from his teeth, then hugged her and patted her back gently. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." The aunties watched him coax the baby in his arms in a proper manner. Lu Yunxi also laughed. Only then did they feel relieved, and explained in detail how to take good care of the baby and other skills before leaving. Looking at the backs of the aunties walking away, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. With the newly obtained meal coupons, the master and apprentice asked for a private room. "I'm so hungry, I don't know if the food in their chain hotel is delicious." Shen San saw the door of the private room closed, and immediately deflated, holding his stomach and lying on the table. "Did you drink 10 bowls of soup just now?" Lu Yunxi raised his eyebrows, ran out of the stroller directly, and jumped onto the table. If an outsider saw this scene, they would definitely be terrified. A baby over 1 year old can not only speak so fluently, but also come and go like the wind. This is really weird. Where are the 10 bowls of soup? Can I only taste a small sip each time? By the way, master, why don't we rent a car and go to the north later? It's too difficult to walk all the way. The important thing is that when the master goes out with a stroller, there are always people who come up to guide him on how to raise a baby. It's really too difficult. Yunxi didn't say anything because the people serving the dishes came. Stacks of exquisite dishes were served. The waiter greeted her warmly. All the dishes you ordered have been served. Please enjoy your meal. After the waiter left, she nodded while eating. You are right. Let's rent a horse carriage. The donkey cart is too slow. The dishes in this restaurant taste really good. They are light and delicious, and they are really similar to the cooking method you taught me. Shen-san picked up a piece of steamed fish with chopsticks and raised his eyebrows slightly. This method is 60% similar to the master's, but unfortunately it is far inferior to the master's. Yunxi looked at the familiar dishes in front of her, but suddenly fell into deep thought. This dish is 80% similar to her mother's. Whether it is the presentation, taste, or color, it is almost the same as when her mother taught her. Later, she improved it, so the apprentice felt that it was not so similar. After tasting all the dishes carefully, she lowered her head. By the way, what's the name of the restaurant we're in now? Shen-san was eating happily when he suddenly heard her question. He was stunned for a moment, took out the meal ticket from his backpack, and then saw the name on it. It's called Fisherman's Inn. I heard that this inn is very famous in the entire water continent. It is almost recognized as the best inn. Not only is it comfortable to stay in, but the food is clean and delicious. Shen-san told the news he had inquired about before, and had some speculations in his mind. Master, could this restaurant be related to your life experience? And Yunxi picked up a few more dishes with chopsticks, and a trace of nostalgia flashed across her face. I don't know about this, but the cooking method and taste of this dish are really similar to those made by my mother. Then should we stay here and ask around? We're here so soon. Shen-san was still a little confused when the coachman called him off the carriage. He remembered that he got on the carriage only 20 minutes ago, right? Is this carriage so fast? The coachman understood the doubt in his eyes. Guest, you are going to the nearest town. This is the nearest town. Do you want to get off? Or do you want to go somewhere else? Shen-san looked at the town with a lot of people in front of him, paid the money readily, pushed the cart, and came to the Fisherman's Inn in the town. Unlike the Fisherman's Inns in big cities, the store here is much smaller, but still clean and tidy. The two ordered the dishes they had eaten before without hesitation, and found that the taste was almost exactly the same as in the previous Fisherman's Inn. Although Ancient is a holographic game, the design inside is very real. They also have chain inns in the forest continent, but you don't need to taste it carefully to find that the same dish tastes very different in inns in different places. Of course, there are also those that are almost the same, but those inns generally have a history of many years and have become large stores. Even the taste and presentation of the Fisherman's Inn in the small town are so good, it can be imagined that this inn should have a long history and has been developed for many years. Yunxi frowned. Could the Fisherman's Inn be related to my mother? Shen-san pushed open the door and interrupted her thoughts. Master, I have inquired about it. All the chefs of the Fisherman's Inn are sent to work in the branches after being taught and trained at the headquarters. The best ones will stay at the headquarters. She glanced at the dishes on the table, most of which were blue products, and a small part were green products. Where's the headquarters? How? She looked up suddenly, and a flash of understanding flashed in her eyes. It seems that this Fisherman's Inn is very likely to be related to my mother. Thinking of what her mother said about being sold when she was a child, her expression turned cold. How? In the grocery store. Shen-san looked at the dazzling array of goods, and his eyes widened slightly. Customer, are you buying something for your child? Is your baby a son or a daughter? Boys' clothes are on the left, and girls' clothes are on the right. The shopkeeper came up to him with a warm face, pointing to the goods on the counter and introducing them one by one. These are the latest products, many of which are made by adventurers. They are really novel and interesting. For example, this pacifier is made of safe materials, and children can't swallow it. When they play with it, they will be well behaved, not noisy, and don't need adults to coax them. The shopkeeper took out the pacifier and showed it to Shen-san. He glanced at Yunxi sitting in the stroller with a strange expression, and a smile that he couldn't restrain flashed in his eyes. Looking at the warning eyes of his master, he clenched his fists to cover his upturned lips, turned his head and talked to the shopkeeper, so as not to smile too much and let his master remember it. Yunxi moved his mouth, looked at his apprentice speechlessly with a distorted face because of holding back laughter, and turned to look at the surrounding goods. The two of them chose things quickly, picking only a few sets of clothes, tables, chairs, bowls, spoons and other necessary items. When they were about to pay. Third Brother Shen. Chapter 91 Catching a Thief. Brother Shen San turned around and saw someone familiar to him, his classmate. This classmate and his brother were quite familiar with each other, so he had seen him several times. Why are you here? He vaguely remembered that this guy and his brother were both born in the forest continent, right? Ordinary people can't cross the continent. At this point, the person on the other side had a bitter face. This is a long story. I accepted a task that asked me to cross the continent to find someone. At that time, I didn't know what crossing the continent was. I thought it must be a big task, so I took it excitedly. Who knew that a light flashed, and I suddenly came here. Now I can't go back. After saying that, he wanted to cry again. I was having dinner with my girlfriend at the time. Who would have thought that I would suddenly disappear? I have been here for almost a month, and I haven't found a way to go back. The man's crying look looked a bit pitiful and a bit funny. Only very powerful masters can cross the continent under very lucky circumstances. You can be regarded as a blessing in disguise. You have seen the scenery that you can't see before. Shen San patted his shoulder and comforted him. Yunxi, who was beside the two of them, was shocked. The person who was talking to Shen San, wasn't it the super powerful hero who she helped win the lantern before? This world is too small. He actually knows his own apprentice. Seeing him talking, he was about to look at her. Yunxi's heart tightened. Where did this child come from? Is there a humanoid pet in the game? This baby is too cute. The super powerful hero lowered his head and saw the cute baby in the stroller. His heart was immediately melted, and pink hearts flashed in his eyes. Shen San shook his head secretly. Another person who was deceived by the appearance of his master. What child? The one in the stroller is clearly, He lowered his head, his face full of doubts about life. The baby in the stroller holding a bottle of milk and sucking non-stop, is it really his master? Yunxi didn't pay attention to the disciple's gaze. She was afraid of being recognized by the super powerful hero. Although she is smaller now, her appearance has not changed much from childhood to adulthood. She had no choice but to pick up a bottle of milk from the counter and hold it tightly, pretending to be enjoying it. The shopkeeper next to her explained with a smile on his face, "Just now, your child wanted the bottle of milk here very much, and kept reaching out to hold it. I simply gave her some goat milk to drink, and she really liked it." Yunxi. Shen San was a little puzzled. I don't know why the master suddenly liked the bottle of milk. But a smart disciple will not question the master's actions. After paying, he pushed the stroller out. The super powerful hero followed him. Brother Shen San, you haven't told me about this child yet? Where did it come from? I also want to raise one. The super powerful hero found it more and more cute. Shen San glanced at the master who seemed to be a normal baby, and his suspicion became heavier. He leaned over to see what happened to the master. But he was pushed away by a fat little hand. Seeing the slightly impatient and warning look in the master's eyes, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the master was not replaced by someone. He stood up and looked at his younger brother's classmates. Don't think about it. It's a special task. There may be no such tasks in the future. It's a pity for the super powerful hero. He was thinking about raising a baby with his girlfriend. Just treat it as a practice in advance. Okay then, he scratched his head, suddenly thought of something, and became excited again. Brother Shen San, where are you going next? I'll go with you. Yunxi's heart tightened. She wanted to get rid of this kid very urgently. With this guy here, she is always on the verge of being exposed. Okay. Shen San knew that he was an NPC, but this kid always thought he was a player. If the two of them talked to each other, they would soon find out that something was wrong. Out of sight of the two, her eyes were heavy. It seemed that if the two of them were going to go together, she would have to find a way to leave her apprentice. At this time, the three of them were chatting, and some were thinking, and they didn't notice that not far away. A strange look swept by. Quietly catch the thief. Catch that little thief. He stole my silver. A young man ran after a masked man breathlessly. Shen San and others who were taking a walk heard this and chased after him without hesitation. The super powerful hero reacted the fastest and chased after him first. However, Shen San's speed was not slow, and he soon surpassed him. Super powerful hero? Wait, brother Shen San, you left the child alone there. Aren't you afraid of something happening? Shen-san laughed and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, she will be fine. The master has a very powerful shield skill, and ordinary people can't hurt her. If even the master can't stop someone, then he can't stop it either. The two followed the masked thief for a long time, but they lost him at the corner. Hoo-hoo, the super powerful hero held his knees with both hands, panting continuously. After catching his breath, he pounded the floor fiercely. It's really abominable. He actually ran away. After saying that, he looked at Shen-san beside him with admiration. Brother Shen-san, you are too powerful. You don't even breathe. Shen-san was frowning and covering his nose at this time. I didn't expect that the masked thief was so cunning that he sprinkled a lot of perfume at the corner. The smell was so strong at this time that he couldn't feel where the person went. He ran all over the places with perfume, but didn't see the thief. The smell gradually dissipated, and he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. I didn't expect that someone could successfully escape under his nose. Could that person be of a high level? However, before the two of them could walk back, they suddenly heard a heart-wrenching scream from a distance. Someone's robbing someone. The screams of terror were so sharp that the two of them couldn't help but cover their ears and run back in a hurry. What happened? The super powerful hero rushed to the outside of the screaming crowd and asked a passerby. Shen-san saw this familiar place, but suddenly had a bad premonition. Isn't this the place where he just saw someone robbing and running away? Could it be that? The bad guesses were circling in his mind, and he immediately pushed the crowd around him. Excuse me, my child is still here. The person who was pushed by him wanted to get angry, but when he heard the latter sentence, he closed his mouth and looked at him with pity. Seeing the sympathetic eyes of the people around him, he felt even more uneasy. Not long after, he squeezed to the center of the crowd, but when he looked down, he could only see the familiar baby carriage, but couldn't see the figure of his own master at all. Is this child yours? Someone next to him asked him with a sympathetic tone. He staggered back a step, took a deep breath, and managed to maintain his calm. It's my house. Where did she go? Just now a masked man snatched someone away and ran away. When we saw him running over, he had already run far away. His eyes lit up. Excuse me, did you see which direction the masked man ran to? Yes, he ran to that direction, but it's winding and full of alleys. I'm afraid he can't be found anymore. The passerby patted his shoulder sympathetically. Don't be too sad. Shen-san ignored the pessimistic words and immediately turned around and ran into the alley. Behind him. When the super powerful hero chased after him, Shen-san had already run away. Yunxi was caught in the armpit, watching the masked man in black running with her. She just yawned. How come the whole world changed in the blink of an eye? And, this scene, is it a little familiar? She suddenly remembered that she had been taken away before, and at that time, she was also carried away in front of her own apprentice by a senior brother from the Misty Rain Palace. To be honest, whether it was being carried on the shoulders or being held under the armpits, it felt very uncomfortable. She used a detection spell and found that the person who grabbed her was only level 20. Although he was 5 levels higher than her current level, she was not worried that she could not beat this guy. She had no idea how many battles she had experienced before, and her combat experience was completely beyond the reach of this masked man. So she simply relaxed her mind and let herself fall asleep. There was no other way. The baby's body really loves to sleep. Chapter 92 Blood Collection. Yunxi slept peacefully, but Shen-san was looking for her like crazy. He was going crazy. He just said that the master would not be in danger, and the next second the master was in trouble. If the master was in trouble under his nose, he, as an apprentice, might as well go back to farm. Don't think about protecting the master anymore. Taking a deep breath, he calmed down and carefully observed the clues around him. The master must be very scared. He promised to protect the master, and he must find her. Night fell. Yunxi woke up and looked up to see that she was in a dark cave. However, she had lived in caves before, so she naturally didn't care about this environment. What she cared about was it was so smelly. This cave was different from the caves she had found before. It was probably a cave of some kind of beast. It might have been solved by the masked man, but there was still animal feces left in the cave. After fermentation, it not only attracted a large number of mosquitoes and flies, but also emitted bursts of rancid smell. Even with her strong willpower, she couldn't bear it. Her action of covering her nose quickly alarmed the person who had captured her. He suddenly lowered his head, looked at her with a strange smile, and stretched out his evil hands to her. Little girl, you finally woke up. Now, I can do it with confidence. Dark cave, dim candlelight, evil smiling man, terrifying laughter. Even Yunxi couldn't help but sweat. If you don't know, you would think this is the scene of a horror movie. Yunxi looked at this wretched guy and was about to hide him when she suddenly found that he didn't walk to her side, but walked to the corner of the cave. She looked at the man inexplicably, not understanding what medicine he was selling in his gourd. I saw that man holding out a vessel from inside, something like a crucible in the witch's story. He pricked her finger with a needle and collected her blood. At that time, she was in a confused state and didn't pay attention for a while. When she reacted, the guy had already got enough blood. Yunxi looked at the man curiously. He poured the blood into the vessel, and then added some miscellaneous weeds, including some herbs for stopping bleeding, relieving cough, and reducing fire. It was very messy. After a series of operations such as burning and steaming, he finally succeeded and completed the things in his hands. The man carefully poured the burnt black things in the vessel into a large porcelain bowl, and then carefully held the bowl and put it to his lips. He closed his eyes and sniffed the smell in the bowl deeply, and sighed, "This fragrance." Sure enough, what the Changsheng Dafa said is right, that is, to add the blood of children, can achieve the most perfect effect. Yunxi looked at him from the side and fell into deep thought. What is the Changsheng Dafa? Add the blood of children? Is she the first victim? Or have many children been harmed by him before? This time, adding the blood of children will definitely succeed, right? The man looked at the black things in the bowl and spoke with a little doubt. After saying that, he took a deep breath and drank the weird stuff in the bowl in one go. Yunxi narrowed her eyes. It seemed that she was the first child caught by this man. It was just a little blood drawn from the fingertips, so she was not hurt much. She was too lazy to bother with it, so she would just send this guy to the authorities later. She closed her eyes in relaxation. The sleepyhead came to play with her again. However, soon, she could not sleep anymore. With a clang, the porcelain bowl fell to the ground and broke into several pieces. The man suddenly fell into madness. He grabbed his hair, full of resentment. Why? Why on earth is this? Why did I fail again? What should I do to succeed? He knelt on the ground, his eyes full of madness, and took out a tattered book from somewhere, and then flipped through it frantically. No, it's still not right. The man flipped through the book page by page. When he saw a certain page, he suddenly paused and showed an expression of sudden enlightenment. So that's it, it's actually like this. He suddenly took out a dagger and approached Yunxi. Seeing the crazy persistence in the man's eyes, Yunxi's heart trembled. Danger. Could it be that the blood just now was not enough, so this guy wanted to kill her? She half closed her eyes and pinched the flesh on her belly with her hands, trying to drive away the sleepiness so that she could fight quickly. But the next second, she withdrew her hand. Because the man spoke. The blood required for the Changsheng Dafa cannot be taken from the fingers, but from the heart. He raised the dagger, and a firm look flashed in his eyes. I'm sorry. In the next life, I will compensate you with another life. This made Yunxi completely sober. She sneered. Compensate her life in the next life? No need. If you want to compensate, just compensate her life in this life. She bent her fingers slightly and was about to strike, but suddenly saw the man in front of her being bounced away with a bang. Her hand paused, and she turned her head to see the furious face of her apprentice. In the darkness, he walked slowly in the moonlight. The candlelight could not illuminate his face, which was half bright and half dark, but from his cold eyes and tightly pursed lips, it could be seen that he was in a bad mood. Who are you? The man who was kicked to the ground wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his face full of fear. You stole my child, and you ask me who I am. Shensan's expression was unpredictable, his face seemed to be mocking and angry. When the man heard this, he looked at him unexpectedly, and then rushed to Yunxi in one step, as if he wanted to grab the hostage to resist. However, Shensan's speed was faster than him. He blocked her in almost an instant and kicked the man in front of him away fiercely. Puff! The man spit out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. What is this? The official was shocked when he saw the man tied up like a caterpillar in front of him, thrown on the ground and squirming wildly. This guy suddenly snatched my child away on the street and wanted to kill my child, Shensan said in a flat tone, as if he was saying that the weather was very good today. When the official heard the tone in his voice that seemed to freeze, he couldn't help but shudder. He looked down at the man with a bruised face in front of him, and was a little embarrassed. But, this man was beaten like this, we can't recognize who he is. He fell like this. Shen-san and the official looked at each other silently. After a long while, the official finally couldn't stand it anymore, sighed, took this guy, and prepared to open the household registration book to check it carefully. After leaving the government office, Shen-san still had a gloomy face all the way. Yunxi felt the low pressure on his apprentice, and couldn't help but quiet down, pretending to be a wooden man. I don't know how long it took. Shen-san suddenly stopped and turned to look at Yunxi sitting in the stroller. Master, he held her shoulders with both hands, his expression was very serious, and her heart skipped a beat. I'm sorry. I was too careless this time. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hurt. After saying that, he hugged her and gently held her fingers that were bandaged like buns, with guilt in his eyes. Master, don't worry, I will definitely follow you every step of the way in the future, and you don't have to worry about danger anymore. Looking at Shen-san's rippling eyes, Yunxi. In fact, for such a small wound, she was too lazy to even use the blood recovery skill. Moreover, the reason why she was injured was because she was also curious about what the man was up to. Otherwise she would not be injured even if she was distracted. But looking at his guilty eyes, the words she wanted to say were choked in her throat, and she couldn't say them out. After a long while, she sighed and patted his forehead. I'm fine, don't worry about me too much, don't feel so guilty. Shen-san didn't respond, but just hugged her quietly. His face was blocked and his expression couldn't be seen clearly. Yunxi reached out and patted his back gently. After this incident, as he said, no matter where she went, he always followed her closely, fearing that something would happen to her. Even if a leaf fell, the apprentice would jump up in fright. In order to calm his anxious heart, Yunxi had to ask him to slow down. When they were no longer busy on the road, they noticed the surrounding scenery. The beauty of snowflakes falling one by one, the sparkling water droplets when the ice and snow melted in some places, and the green of the bare trees began to sprout. Shen-san gradually became less anxious and would not be restless because he couldn't see her for a few seconds. Chapter 93 Malice. It was not until Shen-san recovered that the two of them came to Jianzhou. After entering the city, they found it very lively. The streets and alleys were crowded with people. Everyone was wearing festive clothes, and they were discussing something. Yunxi and Shen-san looked at each other and asked a passerby about the situation. Don't you know? Are you outsiders? Today is the wedding day of a wealthy family in our city. It seems that they will set up a 3-day buffet, and everyone in the city can eat for free. You'd better dress festively and say something nice. I heard that the host will give you a few copper coins. The Lu family is so rich that even a wedding is so lively. After all, it is the most powerful family in our city. Naturally, it is not something that ordinary people can compare to. After hearing the news, Shen-san did not react. He lowered his head and asked her, Master, should we go to the Fisherman's Inn to rest first? Or do you want to watch the excitement? Yunxi's eyes moved unconsciously. Lu family? The same surname as my mother? Is it a coincidence? She lowered her head and thought for a while, and decided to visit the Lu family tonight. It just so happened that there was a wedding in the Lu family. There were people coming and going at this time, and there must be a lot of outsiders. The guards in the mansion were busy, and it was easy for people to take advantage of loopholes. She could take the opportunity to go in and see the Lu family. When she was about to say her plan, she noticed that she was on the street, surrounded by people, so she swallowed back what she was about to say and whispered in his ear, Let's go to the inn first. We are tired after walking for so long. The two came to the Fisherman's Inn. What's strange is that even in the Fisherman's Inn in the small town, there are many guests coming and going. But the Fisherman's Inn in the city of Jianzhou is about the same size as the one in the town, and there are not many guests yet. Maybe because they are VIPs and there are very few guests, the waiter is more enthusiastic towards them than other inns. Lu family? There is only one Lu family in the whole Jianzhou, and that is the family holding the wedding outside. Shen-san and Yunxi saw the dissatisfaction in the waiter's eyes and looked at each other. I heard that family is setting up a buffet for 3 days on the street, and everyone can go and eat. Now people in the city don't have to worry about going hungry. Shen-san seemed to sigh. The waiter curled his lips. Guest, you think too highly of the Lu family. Those who can go to the buffet must have families that are not bad. The real beggars will definitely not be able to enter the banquet. I heard everyone praising the Lu family on the road, and I thought the Lu family was very nice. Seeing that the waiter looked wrong and was hiding something, Shen-san simply changed the subject himself. By the way, When I lived in other places, the fisherman's inn was always tall and beautiful, but why is the store here a little small? When it comes to this issue, the waiter was indignant. This matter has to do with the Liu family. The food that our fisherman's inn is best at is river seafood such as fish and shrimp, but the Liu family is also doing fish and shrimp business here, which makes our business very bad. Shen-san and Yunxi looked at each other. Did they guess wrong just now? Did the waiter dislike the Liu family just because of business competition? The two decided to go to the buffet in person to see what was going on there. What are you doing here, beggar? You don't even have a decent piece of clothing, you're dirty and smelly, you're really messing up the banquet, why don't you get out of here? A man who was dressed fairly well frowned and looked at the beggar in front of him with disgust. After saying that, the two lackeys behind him nodded immediately, rushed to the beggar, punched and kicked the beggar away like a ball. Yunxi stood by the roadside, watching the beggar wipe the blood off his body with trembling hands, then tremblingly climbed up, barely leaning against the wall and leaving. The two looked at this scene, and their brows couldn't help but frown. Master, are we still going in for the banquet? Go back first. The two left as soon as they said they would, but the time they left was not right. When they passed by the door of the Liu family, the sedan chair for the bride just landed. The carriage curtain was opened, and the bride came down slowly. However, at this moment, a gust of wind blew. The veil covering the bride's head suddenly fell off. The bridesmaid was startled and hurriedly stepped forward to make amends. The bride is so beautiful, it's really a match made in heaven. As she spoke, she quickly ran to pick up the veil that fell on the ground. However, she was the only one who noticed this embarrassing thing throughout the whole process. What others saw was that the bride raised her head slightly, with a stunning smile on her gorgeously dressed face, and looked in the direction of Shen-san. Shen-san's handsome face was full of calmness. A talented man and a beautiful woman. When the two looked at each other, it was as if thousands of pink flowers were blooming in the background. Among the onlookers, some gloated, some secretly watched the excitement, and some didn't care. Of course, the one with the most intense emotions was the groom of this wedding. He glanced at Shen-san with a sinister look, and a hint of malice flashed across his eyes, and then he smiled, took the veil picked up by the bride, covered it back without saying anything, and then pulled the bride into the courtyard. When crossing the courtyard, he glanced at the subordinate next to him without leaving a trace. The subordinate immediately understood. Seeing this scene, Yunxi couldn't help but frown, pulled Shen-san's pants, and signaled him to leave quickly. Master, why did you rush me to leave just now? Did you want to observe the Liu family? The groom has a lot of malice, you have to be careful later. The Liu family is the local snake here, I'm afraid someone will come to trouble you later. Yunxi frowned, and glanced at the people under the window with an unclear expression. Shen-san stood by the window, followed her line of sight and looked down, smiled silently, and said in a voice that only he could hear, it's just a group of rats. The two did not go out again, and returned to the room to rest for an afternoon. Night. The master and the apprentice changed into night clothes, hurried along the way, and arrived at the Liu family under the cover of night. In the front yard of the Liu mansion, many guests were drunk, some staggered, some stammered and didn't know what to say, and some shouted to continue serving wine. The servants carefully helped the guests up and sent them all back in the carriage. As night fell, the lively front yard gradually quieted down, but the backyard gradually began to move. The Liu family is a 5-courtyard house with a very large area. It took a lot of time just to figure out the map. In order to be more efficient, Yunxi and Shen-san decided to investigate separately. Shen-san went to investigate the first 2 courtyards, and she would investigate the back 3 courtyards. Among the back 3 courtyards, only the 3rd courtyard was the residence of the newlyweds of the Liu family. The other places were either abandoned or where the servants lived, so she focused on exploring the 3rd courtyard. In the main room, the chanting sound rose and fell. Yunxi was about to bypass the bridal chamber, but suddenly heard the man's voice. When I got off the sedan just now, you looked at that man for so long. Is he good looking? There was not much emotion in his voice. Yunxi, who was about to leave, suddenly paused, subconsciously stopped, and stood in the dark without moving. I didn't look at that man on purpose, it was just that the veil fell down, and he just happened to stand in front of me. A soft and gentle voice sounded. The woman seemed a little anxious, and her voice was crying at the end. The man laughed with an ambiguous meaning. You mean, you didn't betray me? Well, I won't betray you, you are my man. the woman repeatedly assured. The man laughed softly, and then his tone was full of cruelty. I have sent people to deal with that disgusting man. Whether you lied to me or not, he will definitely die, and he will die very ugly. Yunxi heard this, frowned, and then jumped onto the roof silently. Husband, don't worry. That man has nothing to do with me. Just send someone to kill him. I will never stop you. Chapter 94, Powder. Yunxi looked at the faces of the newlyweds and the red color in the room. She didn't feel festive at all, but ironic. What is this called? Unprovoked disaster. Although she felt that this man had ill intentions towards her apprentice at the time, she didn't expect that he couldn't wait for a day and send someone to harm her apprentice so impatiently. Thinking of Shen San, who was investigating in the yard not far away, Yunxi looked at the man in the room, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. The corners of her lips slowly raised a faint smile. He is so brave. He's going to attack her apprentice in front of her. She should also give this kid a big gift. She opened the space and searched inside. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Found it. In the dark night, a few wisps of powder fell and just sprinkled on the man, without any waste. Yunxi took back the medicine bottle and put the tiles back in place. She couldn't help laughing for a long time before she jumped out of the Lu mansion. Shen San also copied all the information collected in the study and put it in his backpack, and also wrote down the conversation between Madame Lu and her maid. The two people's eyes met in the air, and under the cover of night, they returned to the inn together. However, before they could exchange their gains tonight, they saw. In the inn, the waiter, the shopkeeper and other guests all fainted and completely lost consciousness. Some fell to the ground, some lay on the table, and some even fell in the trough. Fortunately, there was no water in the trough at this time, so no one would lose their lives. In such a silent darkness, only their room was noisy. The sound of swords being drawn, the heavy footsteps of men, and the voices of muffled curses were all very clear in Shen San's ears. Although Yunxi was only level 15, she had experienced several battles, and she also raised her head very sharply and looked at the room they had originally booked. After looking for a while, she reached out to the few people who fainted around her. Fortunately, they are still alive. They must have been drugged. After feeling the weak pulse, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want innocent passers-by to die because of them. Shen San nodded, took out his weapon, and sneaked over carefully. Yunxi walked around outside the inn, making sure that everyone was gathered in the room, and then bolted the door of the inn. The apprentice was very fast. Almost when she closed the door, the crackling noise above quieted down. When she walked into the room, several masked men in black clothes were tied up, squatting on the ground, staring at them fiercely. When they saw Yunxi walking over step by step, their eyes widened even more, full of fear. "You, monster!" One of the men kept shaking his body, trembling when he spoke, and tried hard to retreat, but unfortunately he was restricted by the rope. Yunxi. She knew that she was only over 1 year old, and it was indeed a bit strange that she could run, jump and speak fluently. But don't they say there are natural geniuses? Why doesn't this person think he's a genius, but a monster? This guy must be short-sighted. She snorted coldly. How is it? Did you find out anything? They were sent by the young master of the Lu family. They said they wanted to scratch my face, kill me, and throw me into a mass grave. Shen San twitched his mouth and told the news he had found out. He was speechless when it came to this. What on earth did he do to the young master of the Lu family? If you don't know, you would think he was dealing with a 10-life enemy. Yunxi frowned, looked at the group of men in front of him, and stood quietly for a while with his hands folded on his chest. Shen San, I'm sleepy. I'm going to go back to sleep first. Yunxi suddenly turned to look at him. You can deal with these people. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he smiled meaningfully. Leave it to me. She patted his arm. Her eyes flashed, and took out all the spare medicines in the space. These are the powders I made accidentally. If you sprinkle this packet, people will feel itchy all over their bodies. This packet of powder can attract mosquitoes. I guarantee that the person will be bitten to death. Shen San looked at the strange powder in his hand, and the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up. The cold light in his eyes gradually dissipated and became warm. Thank you, master. Looking at the watery eyes of her apprentice, her heart softened. I only gave the kid from the Lu family a little medicine last night, which was a bargain for him. Early in the morning, in the Lu family's new house, the bride's screams broke the sky. The others who were still asleep immediately woke up and turned over and sat up suddenly. What happened? It seems to be the sound in the young master's yard. Is it the young mistress screaming? Did something happen to the young master? In the main courtyard, Master Lu and his wife stood up nervously and asked the maid to help them wash up. The maids and servants who were in charge of the young master's yard also went up to ask nervously. When Master Lu and his wife rushed to their son's yard, they saw that all the servants had been driven out of the yard, and their son's furious voice came from the house. "Get out! Get out!" Along with his furious roar, the sound of broken cups and plates continued to sound. What happened? Master Lu frowned and turned his head to shout at the servants outside the yard. The servants cried, "This! Master, spare us, we don't know." After the young lady screamed, something seemed to break in the room, and then the young master got angry and refused to let us in. Mrs. Lu was furious. "I knew this daughter-in-law was not a good one, but you insisted on choosing this daughter-in-law, and now what? She must have done something to offend my son. How could my son get so angry normally?" Master Lu paused, and there was a rare trace of regret in his heart. The two waited for a long time before entering the house. However, as soon as they entered the house, the Lu couple were stunned. "Son! My son!" Tears welled up in Mrs. Lu's eyes, and she rushed to her son and hugged him tightly. "My poor son, how did you become like this?" Master Lu's face also changed, sometimes blue and sometimes purple. At this time, Master Lu's face changed drastically, as if he had turned into a woman. His original thick eyebrows turned into thin willow leaf eyebrows, his tough face turned into an oval face, and even his nose and lips became very delicate. But if you look closely, you can still see the foundation, which is very much like the Lu family couple. The young lady of the Lu family next to him was in confusion, and she hadn't come back to her senses yet. The more Mrs. Lu looked at her son's appearance, the more angry she became. She rushed to the new daughter-in-law and slapped her hard. Anyway, this daughter-in-law's family background is not as good as theirs. She was chosen by her husband and son together. She didn't like her at all, so she beat her. The young lady of the Lu family didn't expect her mother-in-law to be so difficult to deal with. She beat people when she said she would beat them, and her face turned red with anger. She was the unlucky one. I don't know what disease the Lu family has, and suddenly they changed from men to women. She has merit here, and now she can't regret it. She was beaten. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. She didn't care about filial piety and tolerance, and slapped him back with her backhand. "How dare you hit me?" Mrs. Lu screamed. "Hit you? Why wouldn't I dare? You Lu family cheated us. I'll just not settle accounts with you. How dare you hit me?" Mrs. Lu said, and slapped her twice. Although Mrs. Lu was promoted from a maid, she had been pampered for many years, and now she really couldn't beat Mrs. Lu, who had exercised regularly. After being suppressed and beaten for a long time, she angrily cursed to the people beside her, "You are dead people. Can't you see that I'm being beaten?" However, when they entered the room, Master Lu had already ordered not to let the servants in, and now there were only 4 of them in the room. The 2 men were still immersed in their own thoughts, and even if they heard her shouting, they didn't want to pay attention to her. Shen San hid in the dark, watching the Lu family in a mess in the house, and he was very happy. Last night he saw the master pouring some powder under the Lu family. At that time, he was still surprised, thinking that he had discovered something wrong with the Lu family. Now that he thought about it, maybe the master heard yesterday that the kid from the Lu family was going to cause trouble for him. The master was venting his anger for him. This medicine will not really turn this kid into a woman, but only soften his facial features a little, making him look more like a girl. It's a pity that they can still quarrel so fiercely. Chapter 95 Lost. Seeing the Lu family in such a mess, Shen San felt much better. After thinking for a while, he took out the other medicine powder given by his master and poured some more. Seeing that the man began to have rashes and scratch constantly, he smiled with satisfaction. A few days later, when Yunxi and Shen San were eating in the inn, they found that the waiter became cheerful, the guests began to increase, and the gossips were heard. "Have you heard? The Lu family has been making a lot of trouble recently. They just got married, and they are asking for a divorce. This is still a small matter. I heard that the young master of the Lu family seems to have some serious disease, so the young lady is asking for a divorce." "I know. I heard that the young master of the Lu family has a rash all over his body and it itches everywhere, but why did I hear that he had an internal disease, so the young lady didn't want to stay in the Lu mansion anymore? If someone can cure the young Master Lu's disease, I heard that they can get 1,000 taels." Lu Yunxi and Shen San looked at each other and smiled. "Master, here are all the information I got from the people of the Lu family. Take a look." Lu Yunxi took the sorted information and looked at it silently. Her eyes changed from being calm at the beginning to becoming cold. "The Lu family is indeed related to my mother." After reading all the information, her tone became more and more gentle, as if she was saying that the weather was really good today. Shen San shuddered when he saw Master like this. "The Lu family. They have offended Master." Don't look at Master's nonchalant look. The more relaxed her expression is at this time, the more serious the consequences for the Lu family will be. Having said that, it's no wonder that Master is so angry. If it were him, he would not let the Lu family go. Master's mother is called Lu Yunyang. She is the original daughter of the Lu family and has a twin sister. However, when she gave birth to 2 twin daughters, Master Lu made a fuss about taking a concubine. This made Mrs. Lu angry. In addition, giving birth is an energy-consuming job. After 2 rounds, her body began to weaken gradually. But for the sake of her 2 daughters, Madame Lu still tried very hard to find a doctor to take medicine, eat on time and exercise. However, the effect was not very good, because during this period, Master Lu kept operating and concubines kept coming in. Not only did they include girls redeemed from Qinlao and Chugwan, but also girls who sold themselves on the street to bury their fathers, and even girls bought from human traffickers. In short, the home of Master Lu and Madame Lu, which originally only had Master Lu and Madame Lu, suddenly had a lot of concubines, all kinds of shapes and styles. Master Lu originally made his fortune by relying on Madame Lu's family. In order to ensure that he would treat Madame Lu wholeheartedly in the future, he even changed his surname. Even if the Lu family refused this, he was still very persistent. Master Lu was supported by the Lu family and rose step by step. When he was promoted to the 3rd rank, a disaster suddenly occurred in Jianzhou, far in the south. At that time, there was a shortage of people in the court, and the Lu family happened to encounter troubles. Without paying attention, Master Lu was designed by his opponents and sent to Jianzhou as an imperial envoy. However, this imperial envoy was not sent here to be gilded, but to solve problems. Mr. Lu was supported by Mrs. Lu's family all the way, and his positions were insignificant, not important positions. Once he encountered a real problem, he was at a loss. In short, after going through this and that, Jianzhou not only did not get better, but the situation became more and more tense, and even many rebels appeared. The court was furious and immediately sent people to remove Mr. Lu's official position. After losing his official position, he seemed to have changed into a different person, not caring about Mrs. Lu at all, and taking concubines crazily for pleasure. Mrs. Lu's body gradually couldn't stand it. The Lu family had something wrong at the time, and they were far away, so they couldn't take care of her as a married woman. Not long after, Mrs. Lu left. And almost not long after she left, the new Mrs. Lu became pregnant and took the position, and also sold Lu Yunyang and her sister. The 2 sisters separated, and Lu Yunyang made a request to Lu Yunxi Lu's family, in the young master's yard. Ah! A familiar scream cut through the sky. Master Lu and Madame Lu sat up from the bed angrily. The maids next to them immediately came up with basins of water, wanting to help them wash and change clothes. However, Madame Lu pushed them away impatiently. "Get away. Didn't I say I wanted to change clothes?" The maids were startled and quickly knelt down to beg for mercy. Master Lu waved his hand impatiently. "Go down." After that, he turned his head and looked at Madame Lu. "Why are you so angry?" In the final analysis, this matter is to blame that inexplicable daughter-in-law. Madame Lu was so angry that her face turned red. She pushed away the quilt on her body and pouted at the man. "Master, why don't you take care of it? It's been a few days. She wakes up like this every morning. She deliberately makes us restless, right? She is aggrieved to let her marry her son." Master Lu was also very dissatisfied. Originally, they had deliberately chosen a daughter-in-law whose family background was lower than theirs, fearing that this daughter-in-law would give them a hard time when they were old. Who would have thought that she would make a fuss in the mansion when he was still fine? He raised his eyelids. "Let someone help wash up. I will go find my in-laws later. We should have a good talk about the rules of this matter." However, as soon as he finished speaking, he heard a banging sound outside. "How can you be so flustered?" Master Lu was furious. However, the maid who came in knelt down with a plop. "Master, Madam, Something bad has happened. The young master, he, is missing. Madame Lu grabbed the maid's hand and held it tightly. Her eyes almost popped out. What did you say? What is missing? When the young lady got up in the morning, the young master was still in bed, but when she came back from changing clothes, she found that the master was gone. The maid's eyes were full of panic and her face turned pale. In the Lu mansion, the most important thing is their young master. Once something happens to the young master, all of them can't make up for it even if they die. Where is your young lady? She is dead. A living person was lost in her room, and she didn't even notice it. Madame Lu was so angry that she almost couldn't breathe. She pointed at the maid with a trembling finger, and then slapped the bed fiercely. Find it. Hurry up and find it for me. The maids took action one after another, but they secretly cried out in their hearts. The young master is missing. What can they do? In the far suburbs of Jinzhou City, on a mountain road near another city, young Master Lu had his hands and feet tied up, and his mouth was taped. He was mumbling and trying to say something. If eyeballs could kill, the group of people in front of him would have been dead long ago. Boss, this guy is dressed so well, could he really be the young master of a rich family? One of the people who had just arrived not long ago looked at young Master Lu, who was about to burst out with anger on the ground, and said hesitantly. The eldest brother sitting in the middle said, "You are still too young. This guy was sold by his family. They said that the farther away the better. This matter. You can tell at a glance that it is a dirty matter of those wealthy families. Don't interfere. Send him away as soon as you receive the money. It is best to send him to the mountains where he can never come back. Otherwise, if he is found, we will be the unlucky ones." The others listened in a daze, and they were a little dumbfounded. So this guy really came from a wealthy family. Thinking of this, the originally calm people panicked and hurriedly accelerated the speed of the carriage, fearing that they would be caught up. Just when the carriage left Jinzhou, the people who were originally sent by the Lu mansion to find Master Lu were urgently stopped again. Don't go. Master Lu urgently recalled all the servants. There's a thief in the mansion. Go check immediately. Who is so bold, dare to be so presumptuous in my mansion, and actually stole so many things from me? For him, the gold, silver and jewelry that were stored in this mansion with great effort are his most important things. Son? Without him, they can have another one in the future. But without these treasures, their family will be finished. Mrs. Lu's eyes were full of tears, and she pleaded with a man, "Master, please send someone to find my son. My son. I can't live without him." She herself was originally a little maid with no skills. She used to be responsible for making tea, but before she could master the skills, she won the prize and became pregnant with the master's child, so she could get promoted. Once she lost her son, the master would definitely drive her out. Thinking of this, seeing that the master was still unwilling to let anyone find his son, her legs softened, and she fell to the ground with a butt, her face full of confusion and fear. What should she do in the future? The servants of the Lu family looked at the flustered master and mistress and were also very flustered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96, No Rollover. Half a month later, Lu Yunxi and Shen San got on a carriage. When they passed a small wooden house closest to the outer city, they heard a quarrel coming from inside. "What are you doing? Do you still think you are the master of the Lu family? There are only 2 plates in the house. If you break this, there will be no plates to put dishes in the house. Eat 1 dish a day in the future. Didn't you say to buy more chicken to replenish my body? I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant with the next generation of the Lu family. Master, find someone to save your son. I dreamed that my son was crying." The voice behind him gradually became smaller. Lu Yunxi and Shen San smiled at each other, got on the carriage and left Jinzhou, leaving only a back figure in the afterglow of the sunset. "Master, are we going to Huzhou next?" Shen San looked at the map he bought, and then looked at the master sitting next to him who didn't know what he was thinking, and asked softly. Although the people of the Lu family got retribution, the master was not very emotional on the road after he came out. This is also easy to understand. After all, her aunt still didn't know where she was sold to. She just heard that she was in Huzhou. What if that person was not the one she was looking for? Lu Yunxi rubbed her eyebrows tiredly, not knowing that her apprentice had thought so much. In fact, she was just exhausted. The child's body was more easily tired than she thought. Although she had been causing trouble for the Lu family, it actually took only a few hours to plan and only a few hours to actually execute. The rest of the time was spent on paying attention to the progress. Even so, the child's body was still very sleepy. But she still held on, because the scenery in the middle of the water continent was so beautiful. Although there seemed to be some pools and lakes along the way, there were also differences between lakes. She had seen a mirror-like lake surface, clear pool water, and a waterfall. Yunxi looked at the waterfall in front of her, and her sleepy eyes suddenly widened. Shen-san also looked up at the spectacular waterfall. The waterfall was very high, about more than 100 floors high, and the area was very wide, and there was no end in sight. The closer you get to the waterfall, the more you can hear the sound of water splashing on the ground, and you can also feel the cool temperature. Well, spring is only halfway through, so it is still quite cool, but seeing such a magnificent waterfall, the two of them were still surprised to walk over. Master, look, Shen-san has reached the master level, and his eyes are very sharp. He saw the things hidden in the waterfall at a glance and pointed to the bottom of the waterfall. Yunxi looked in the direction he pointed, staring for a long time, and could only see a vague black thing under the waterfall. What is that? Is it a treasure chest? She frowned, her face full of confusion. It looks like a cave. It can be hidden under the waterfall. The idea of planning is too amazing, right? Shen-san was so excited that he accidentally said a word he shouldn't have said. The water curtain cave in Huaguo Mountain, she asked subconsciously. What? What mountain? Shen-san didn't hear clearly, thinking she was talking about a cave, so he nodded. It's a cave, right? She didn't mention what she said again, but looked at him who was eager to try, and asked, do you want to go in and take a look? He nodded immediately, his eyes full of excitement. There are really many new things in ancient times. This is something he has never come into contact with before. Although he has been to many alien planets for exploration before, he went there with missions at that time, so how could he have so much fun? Yunxi jumped into his arms habitually. Shen-san held her, put away the carriage, and jumped up using the stones under the waterfall. Passing through the cave entrance blocked by water, the two stood at the entrance of the cave in wet clothes. After changing into dry clothes, they continued to move forward. The cave here is very dark, but there is no peculiar smell. Shen-san took out a night pearl from his bag, put it in her arms, and then held her and continued to walk deeper. Tick tick tick. The sound of water drops falling kept ringing in my ears. When the two turned their heads and looked around, they suddenly saw a flash of white light in front of them, and the familiar system prompt appeared again. Yunxi jumped up and tried to leave this dungeon. However, she was still a step slower. When she jumped down, she had already appeared in a new dungeon. The two stood in the dungeon, looking at the small bamboo raft on their feet, and there was a river around them. The bamboo raft slowly moved forward along the water flow, and their expressions suddenly became subtle. The previous experience in the lake dungeon seemed to be just yesterday. When they thought that they had just finished the dungeon not long ago, they had to go to the dungeon again, and their expressions became bad. Again? I hope this dungeon is not level 90. Shen-san's hand holding Yunxi tightened slightly, and he also felt a subtle uneasiness in his heart. Time flies, and in a blink of an eye, 5 years have passed. Fortunately, Yunxi had long discovered that the time in the dungeon is different from that outside. 5 years in the dungeon passed, but only half a year in the holographic world. Otherwise, she would be anxious to death. Shen-san naturally discovered it earlier, but he couldn't tell his master, otherwise she would ask him how he knew, then how should he answer? So in the past 5 years, Shen-san has always been paying attention to the master's emotions. If the master is really upset, he will tell the truth regardless of the consequences. However, the master is always calm, and he becomes more and more uneasy. If the master is hysterical, breaks down and cries, and beats the ground in anger, this is normal, but it is abnormal for her to be so calm. Think about a person who has been locked up in an isolated place for 5 years. Anyone would go crazy. But after the master recovered his sight a year ago, he fought monsters with him, and soon he was promoted to the master level. This must be because the master was too stimulated. Isn't it always said that some people will suddenly become stronger after being stimulated? She is a life-type NPC. Yunxi felt the urgent gaze beside him, and finally couldn't help sighing. This guy has been staring at him all the time for 5 years. Even if he is staring at a prisoner, he doesn't need to do this, right? Chen-san, what are you looking at me for? She raised her eyebrows. Her tone was like a hooligan who stopped a young lady on the street, a little frivolous. What? Are you in love with me? Chen-san was stunned. Master, why did she speak in such a tone? For a moment, he lowered his head, unable to restrain the heat on his face. Looking at the rare shyness of her apprentice, she raised her eyebrows in surprise. I didn't expect the apprentice to be so innocent. That's right. The apprentice's family conditions are not good, and he may even have difficulty eating. How can he have the mind to think about these things? Chen-san lowered his head for a long time before looking up and smiled helplessly. Master, don't joke. I'm just worried about you. Don't worry. Guessed his thoughts. Her face was light. Don't say that it's only been 5 years. Even if it's another 10 or 20 years, I won't be afraid. It's not easy to say that she already knew the truth, so she could only act calm. Let's go. She picked up her weapon, ignoring his inquiring eyes. The wind blew up her cloak behind her, making a rustling sound. Let's try again. They had already reached the last level of this dungeon. As long as they defeated this level 80 boss, they could completely clear the level. She was so excited when she thought that she could get out soon. She had been grinding in this dungeon for 5 years. Except for the first year when she recovered her height and level, she had been playing dungeons in the following years, but they were always stuck at the last level. Fortunately, the monsters here were fixed in a certain position. If they couldn't beat them halfway through, they could run away quickly. After escaping the attack range, the boss would no longer chase them. The two of them could stay here safely by fighting for a while and hiding for a while. Shen-san picked up the giant sword and followed her footsteps. The two came to the final boss again. Yunxi took the lead in shooting an arrow, opening the curtain of the battle. Toad felt the crisis, his eyes sharpened, and he used his tongue to attack. This time he was finally stable. Both of them have reached level 79, so they won't fail if they fight together against a level 80 monster. Yunxi watched the health bar on the toad's head drop rapidly, and nodded secretly. However, in the next second, a man and a woman go to the dungeon together. Congratulations on triggering the hidden dungeon. The boss level is upgraded, and the reward is doubled. Chapter 97 No Longer Heartbeat. Yunxi and Shen-san looked at the toad that suddenly revived with full health, and fell into confusion. What's going on? Does the system prompt mean that they have to fight the toad again? Shen-san tentatively raised the giant sword. However, her pupils shrank, and she immediately threw a protective shield over it. Be careful, Shen-san. This guy has become level 90, she roared, and instantly released a rain of arrows. His eyes were stern, and he looked at the top of the boss's head. Sure enough, it was already a level 90 monster. It would be fine if it had risen 10 levels in a row. This is a monster that has changed from a master-level monster to a grandmaster-level monster. The two of them stepped back a few steps, trying to use long-range attacks to grind the toad to death. The toad was very clever, and it dodged their attacks in an instant. Instead, it stretched out its tongue a few times and poked them away. Looking at the sizzling protective shield, the eyes of the master and apprentice became solemn. Master, can the shield hold up? Although the master always boasted that there was no danger that the shield could not hold up, it looked like the shield was about to fail. Yunxi immediately cast a detection spell on the shield on his body, and only breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that it was safe. Don't be afraid, the reason why the shield is sizzling is because the toad's toxins are too strong, but the shield can still hold up. The two of them watched as the shield kept making noises after being touched by the toad, accompanied by bursts of smoke, but it was never broken, so they gradually felt relieved. However, the toad that crossed 10 levels and broke through a large level is completely different from the 80-level toad. Yunxi and Shen-san fought for a full half an hour, and the toad's blood was only reduced by about 1%. Looking at the blood bar that was only slightly reduced, Yunxi felt exhausted. It's really too hard to fight. The two of them wasted a lot of time, and found that when the toad got angry, it would jump around, making it even harder to aim. So they had to give up fighting monsters and return to a place outside the attack range, preparing to set up camp and rest. The two of them ate dinner in silence, feeling that the food was tasteless. Tomorrow we will go find some low-level monsters to practice our skills, and then go find the toad when we are better. According to today's situation, even if they go to find the toad tomorrow, They will not be able to win. They can only kill small monsters first and raise their levels before trying again. Shen-san nodded. The next day, the two began their journey to kill monsters. Unexpectedly, killing monsters was not boring. In the past, in order to save her life, Yunxi often went up the mountain to kill monsters alone. At that time, she didn't think it was a big deal, not to mention that she had her apprentice with her now. When her apprentice was giving her experience. Be careful. The skin of this monster is poisonous, don't touch it with your hands. Shen-san was shocked to see that his master wanted to reach out and touch the monster directly. He didn't care about standing behind her and immediately grabbed her hand. Yunxi was in his arms, and one of her hands was tightly held by him. This somewhat strange posture made her feel strange instantly, and the temperature of her ears gradually increased. She lowered her head and patted her face with her empty hand. Obviously, he held her countless times when she was a baby, but before that, she was always a baby. It's not like now. After her height has recovered, doing this action again, there's always a sense of unnaturalness. I don't know if Shen-san also felt something was wrong, so he quickly withdrew his hand, whispered a few words, and then reached out to her. Yunxi saw him reaching out for the knife. She wanted to refuse, but when she felt the heat of accidentally touching her fingers, her hand trembled slightly and subconsciously let go. The knife fell into his hand instantly. He put on gloves and began to collect seriously. She stood beside him, her whole body was a little dazed, rubbing the residual heat on her hands. She lowered her head, her eyes wandering, and her ears were red. When she came to her senses, he had already finished collecting. Master, he seemed to have received some news, and his smiling eyebrows gradually froze, and he looked at her with a little apology. I want to sleep for a while, and then I will continue to fight monsters with you later, okay? Yunxi's face turned pale uncontrollably. She forced a smile. What nonsense are you talking about? If you are tired, just take a rest. Anyway, we can't deal with level 90 guys immediately. Shen-san breathed a sigh of relief, set up a tent and went to sleep. Looking at the suddenly quiet copy, Yunxi lowered her eyes. What Shen-san called rest, in fact, someone was looking for him, so he went offline, right? Touching her chest, she smiled bitterly. At that moment just now, she was actually a little moved. Is she crazy to be moved by someone who is not in the same world as her? She closed her eyes and exhaled deeply. Yunxi, a person from the holographic world, must never fall in love with people in the real world again. There is no future if she falls in love. She said to herself silently, in her heart. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, another 5 years have passed. Yunxi has reached level 87 after crazy leveling, and Shen-san didn't know what happened in the real world recently. He frequently went offline, so he was one step slower than her and was only level 83. But the combined attack power of the two is completely different from what they thought. They decided to try to find the final boss Toad again. However, just as they were counting the potions and equipment, Shen-san suddenly said, Huh? What's wrong? Didn't we hold an egg on the ice continent before? Has the egg hatched? But I've always forgotten about it. The system reminds me that my pet is about to starve to death. Shen-san looked at the system reminder in surprise. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly thought of something. The system is. Yunxi pretended not to hear the latter half of the sentence, but asked a little nervously, the pet is about to starve to death? Let's see what it wants to eat. Let me see if there is anything in my backpack. The pet eggs that were finally obtained have hatched. If it starves to death at this time, it would be a pity. Shen-san stopped when he was about to explain. It seems that when NPCs hear words like system, they will be automatically blocked, otherwise the master would not seem to have heard nothing. Let me see. He was relieved and looked down at the system panel. It seems to need goat milk or cow's milk, fruit, a little minced meat. Yunxi listened and took out the things he needed from the space. He secretly wondered in his heart, what kind of pet was hatched? The food is too messy, right? Ordinary people can't afford it. As Shen-san was reading, he also became suspicious. He opened his pet panel, only to find that his pet was actually. Master, my pet is a dragon. Dragon? What dragon? She was still a little confused and asked subconsciously. The next second she suddenly came to her senses and widened her eyes. It's an ice and snow dragon. It's blue. He released the pet. A dying ice blue dragon was lying on the ground, looking very bad. Yunxi immediately gave it a blood recovery, and then carefully fed it. The two of them worked hard and finally rescued the little dragon. It was also thanks to this dragon that it was able to survive after being hungry for so many years. If it was another pet, it would have died long ago after staying in the pet system for so long. Yunxi was a little confused when he carried the little dragon to a soft nest. Chen-san, do you think this dragon looks familiar? Indeed, this dragon looks almost exactly like the dragon we met on the ice continent, except for the size difference. Maybe it is the child of that dragon. Yunxi nodded. That bird is really bold. It dared to put the dragon eggs in its own nest, and it was not afraid that the dragon would settle accounts with it. He did not care about this matter, but smiled foolishly at the panel. Master, this dragon is born with master level. When the time comes, we can let it fight with us. Maybe we can defeat the toad in one go? Oh, hearing this good news, Yunxi decided to wait until the little dragon had got dressed, and then go to fight the boss together. That night, the two of them and the dragon touched the toad and took the lead in launching an attack. Although none of them has reached the master level so far, the 3 master level moves added together are enough to give the toad a hard time. Chapter 98 Massage. After grinding for most of the day, Yunxi and his group finally defeated the toad and cleared a dungeon. After leaving the dungeon, she opened the system and checked the time without caring about the 1 person and 1 dragon who were panting with exhaustion. 10 years had passed in the dungeon, but only 1 year had passed in the holographic world. Great! It took a year to upgrade from level 71 to level 87. Now she no longer has to worry about her life. In various continents, she can walk sideways with her strength. Seeing that there was no one else who broke through the master level except the apprentice in the player rankings, she couldn't help laughing. The 1 person and 1 dragon next to her saw her like this, and a trace of worry flashed in their eyes. Master, what are you laughing at? Did the master go crazy after being locked up in the dungeon for too long? Haha, hiccup. She found an excuse to fool around, but found that she couldn't stop hiccuping. Yunxi hiccuped hard, and Shen-san felt distressed when he saw it. He immediately took out a mountain spring water that he had boiled before and carefully fed her some. But the folk method of drinking water while burping, which was passed down from somewhere, just didn't work at this time. She drank more than half a cup of water, and when her stomach was a little full, she still burped non-stop. Damn. Is this what it means to be overjoyed? If I had known, I wouldn't have laughed so arrogantly just now. She pressed her chest with her hand, trying her best to relieve the pain in her chest. Master, Shen-san felt more and more distressed, and immediately held her shoulders with 1 hand and patted her back gently with the other hand. Why don't we go to the clinic to have a look? Yunxi tried to use the blood recovery technique on herself, but the more seriously ill she was, the more effective this skill was. Minor problems like hiccups, it just couldn't be cured. He looked at her pale face and felt very uncomfortable. He took out a bed from his backpack, picked her up like a princess and put her on the bed. This small single bed was prepared for him, just for convenience. It was very narrow and hard, and it was very uncomfortable to sleep on. He didn't care when he bought it, but now that he saw his master lying on this hard bed, he felt even more distressed. She should be lying on the most expensive, most gorgeous, and most comfortable big bed, not this hard wooden bed. Xiaolong, remember to protect the master, Shen-san instructed Xiaolong, and returned to the bed after Xiaolong nodded. Master, wait for me here. He tucked the corner of the quilt and patted her back with a gentle voice. Yunxi watched him run away directly with Qingguang, and didn't bother to ask him where he was going. She kept burping in her mouth, and she closed her eyes in discomfort. I shouldn't hiccup when I fall asleep, right? Xiaolong watched the mistress close her eyes and rest, so she curled up on the bed and fell asleep. Master, hearing Shen-san's voice, Yunxi covered her chest and opened her eyes. The hiccups were too severe, and she couldn't sleep even if she wanted to. I bought you some sugar, why don't you try it? Shen-san put all the things he bought on the side and gave them to her to try one by one. There are many strange folk prescriptions for treating hiccups. Drinking water is only the most common one. There are also eating sugar, drinking vinegar, drinking tea, etc. There are too many methods. After Yunxi tried a bunch of inexplicable things, her hiccups did not get better at all, but she became more depressed. These ghost things are really disgusting. After all, most of them are seasonings. How can raw seasonings taste good? Seeing her depressed look, Shen-san frantically turned out the potions he had hoarded before. However, the best potions in his hands were basically obtained from his master, So naturally there was nothing that could help. Seeing her uncomfortable look, Shen San felt worse and worse, and he wished he could take her place. He put his arm around her shoulders and gently patted her back. Lu Yunxi leaned on his chest, feeling uncomfortable and almost suffocated, and her face became paler and paler. Shen San comforted her for a long time, and seeing that her condition was still very bad, he carried her on his back, crossed the path, and walked steadily and quickly to a nearby town. In the clinic, the doctor's face was sometimes serious and sometimes relaxed, and Shen San's mood also went up and down. "Doctor, how is she?" He couldn't stand the ups and downs of his mood. After the doctor finally finished taking his pulse, he asked anxiously. "Young man, don't be anxious." The doctor looked at him subtly, with some teasing in his smile. "Your wife is in good condition. The hiccups are probably due to the sudden change of mood. You don't need to take medicine. You can massage her later." There is a lot of information in this sentence. Shen San choked. "Wife? No, she is not." "What is massage?" "Massage, it's..." The old doctor choked, not knowing how to explain it to him. "I'll do it on the bronze man later, and you'll understand." After watching the doctor's teachings in amazement, he asked a little unnaturally, "Is there no other way? This is too, not very appropriate, right?" This technique seems to be suitable for people who are particularly close. When he thought of the strict precautions between men and women in ancient times, he had a headache. "It's okay not to massage," the doctor said, "then you can try acupuncture, but the effect of acupuncture may be a little worse." When the sleepy Lu Yunxi heard the word acupuncture, she sat up suddenly. "No, I don't want acupuncture, just massage, master. Is this comfortable?" "How about this?" Shen San rubbed Lu Yunxi's abdomen with one palm. Normally, the massage should be done a little below the chest, but this position is too awkward, so he massaged her abdomen. Lu Yunxi lay on the bed, feeling the warmth of her abdomen. The feeling of wanting to hiccup became weaker and weaker. Her eyelids twitched for a while and then gradually closed. He watched her gradually fall asleep and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The awkward feeling disappeared instantly. He shook his arms, which were a little tense due to nervousness, and waited until the muscles relaxed a little before covering her lower abdomen with his palms and rubbing them. With his movements, her somewhat painful expression also completely relaxed. It seemed that she felt comfortable, and a smile gradually appeared on her face. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't expect that the method the doctor said, which looked simple, was actually so effective. But soon, his thoughts changed again. For some reason, he felt a little depressed when he saw his master falling asleep easily. At night, in the single room of the inn, there was a man and a woman alone, and the candlelight was dim. In such an ambiguous atmosphere, the master didn't care about the existence of a man like him, and fell asleep so relaxedly. Did she trust him too much, or didn't she regard him as a man? He exhaled a breath of turbid air in depression, put aside distracting thoughts, and concentrated on massaging again. The next day, Lu Yunxi looked at the disciple with dark circles under his eyes, and she felt a little guilty. She didn't expect the disciple to be so filial that he didn't sleep all night just to massage her. She pushed him quickly. "Chen Sen, go to bed quickly. We will rest here for the next 7 days, and we won't leave. We will set off again after we have enough sleep." 7 days is enough for Shen San to go back to the real world and sleep for a few days and nights. Shen San hesitated for a moment, and was pushed to the bed by her, and then he stopped objecting. StarCraft, capital Star, Fu family. The youngest brother of the Fu family was sitting on the sofa eating fruit, but he saw that the third brother actually climbed out of his precious game cabin. If this happened occasionally, he would not find it strange. But during these few days of vacation, the third brother actually came out every day, as if he had a normal schedule, doing morning exercises in the morning, reading in the afternoon, and going to bed on time at night. Looking at the third brother sitting on the sofa, reading and smiling, he leaned over and looked at a pile of magazines on the coffee table. Fashion, 6 popular braids in spring, the charm of matching. Looking at these weird books, he fell into magic. Is there something wrong with his brain? The third brother who never cared about clothes and wore a suit all day long. He was actually reading a fashion magazine. And he was smiling so charmingly. Third brother, he patted his third brother's shoulder tentatively, but was instantly swept by a cold gaze, and his arm was quickly grabbed. Hiss, God! Third brother used to be good at fighting, but he played games all day long. How could he be stronger than him who trained every day? Third brother, it's me, He screamed in pain and rubbed his arm. Fu Jinheng realized that it was his silly brother who came over. Just a moment ago, he thought someone attacked him. Why are you here? Third brother, you are always paying attention to clothing accessories recently. Could it be that you have a girlfriend? The younger brother of the Fu family instantly forgot the pain in his hand just now, and pushed Fu Jinheng with a smile on his face. He twitched his eyes and ignored the younger brother who was sick. How is it possible? I'm studying how to make clothes for my master. Your master? How is this possible? Making clothes for your master? Why are you smiling so happily? The younger brother Fu didn't believe what the third brother said. Although he always praised the beauty of third brother's master, he actually had never seen what she looked like. In his mind, third brother's master should be a very powerful old woman, or an unknown aunt. It is impossible to make clothes for such a woman with such a charming smile. Third brother, don't lie to me. You just smiled like that. Tisk tisk tisk. Chapter 99, Rich Family Seeking a Marriage. When Shen San suddenly appeared in front of Lu Yunxi, she was walking in the night market. Seeing his gloomy face, she was shocked and thought that her apprentice had discovered that she was a fake NPC. But soon, she realized that it was impossible for her apprentice to suddenly discover this secret. She blinked her eyes to cover the curiosity in her eyes. Shen San suddenly got angry. Did something happen in the real world? Lu Yunxi turned her head and went to the side to buy a candied horse, ready to comfort her filial apprentice. When paying, she saw Shen San looking at her with a complicated expression. She didn't know what he was thinking. When she was about to turn around, he actually hid in the corner. She pretended not to see the hiding apprentice, secretly raised her eyebrows, and ate the candied horse prepared for him. Strange. What's wrong with Shen San? What's wrong with him? Shen San was also confused at this time. My younger brother said that when he was looking at the magazine, he smiled as sweetly as if he was thinking about his lover. Sweet. Ridiculous. How could such an expression appear on his face? When he was looking at the magazine, he was thinking about how to make some nice clothes for his master. The clothes in ancient times are very nice, but in the interstellar era, there are some more novel and unique designs that can be added. Maybe it was because his master had become smaller before, and he had always been making clothes for his master. After doing so much, it became a habit. Even if his master became an adult, he was used to making clothes for his master. He didn't have any strange ideas. Shen San took a deep breath. He was annoyed and just came online when he saw that familiar figure. She was walking on the street, her eyes and eyebrows revealed joy. She was talking to the vendor, and she didn't know what she was talking about, but her eyebrows were curved. She picked a particularly beautiful candied horse. Enough. Master, master, master. What's wrong with him? Why is he always thinking about the master? He didn't look at it anymore, and quickly slipped away before the master turned around. A few days later. Chen San, if you are not feeling well, let's rest for a few more days before leaving. Lu Yunxi looked at her apprentice with dark circles under his eyes, hesitating to speak. There is no rush to find your aunt, you can go later. She saw her apprentice on the street that day, and he disappeared for a few days until today. But now his eyes are all black, and he looks weak as if he had just been sick. She was almost scared when she saw him. She thought her apprentice had suffered a major blow. But Shen San smiled with relief. Master, I'm fine. It's just that I couldn't figure out some things a few days ago, and I finally figured it out today. No matter what, even if the sky falls, you should go to bed quickly. She firmly pressed him on the bed and didn't let him get up. When they arrived downstairs of the inn, they added 7 days directly. Shen San looked at her back as she went downstairs, and a smile flashed in his eyes. He had completely figured it out. The reason why he smiled so happily at that time was because he regarded his master as his own daughter. When the master became smaller, not only did his body become smaller, but his mind also became more childish and a little squeamish. In the journey with the master, he gradually treated the master as his own child. So when he thought of making clothes for her, he smiled so happily. How could he not be happy to dress up his own girl beautifully? Thanks to the younger brother who talked about it, he thought he really liked the master. Haha. It's impossible to think about it. The town ahead looks very lively. I see a lot of people on the street. I wonder if they just happened to catch up with the market. Lu Yunxi stood at the gate of the town, looking at the bustling flow of people, a little hesitant. This flow of people is not ordinary. She doubts whether the two of them can squeeze in. Shen San randomly found a few passers-by to understand the situation. It turned out that the only daughter of the rich family in this town was looking for a husband, which was why it was so lively. This is the only wealthy family in our town. If I can marry their daughter, I can save 100 years of hard work in the future. I can eat delicious food and drink spicy drinks every day, and I don't have to do anything. Not only that, if one person succeeds, the whole family will benefit. Not to mention the person who is being recruited, even the other people in the family can live a good life, and this girl is a fairy. Passers-by chatted with each other. Lu Yunxi and Shen San looked at each other, walked through the crowd, and walked out. Since it was a matter of recruiting a daughter, it naturally had nothing to do with them. The two did not want to watch the excitement, so they hurried forward. However, they could not walk through the town immediately if they wanted to. There were too many people. As they walked, the two were about to be dispersed by the crowd. "Let's meet outside the town," she shouted loudly a second before her apprentice was squeezed away. Without caring about her apprentice, Lu Yunxi used her agility to quickly squeeze out of the crowd and stood outside the town. Almost a second before she walked out of the town, she heard a commotion behind her. Wow! Lu Yunxi turned around and saw her apprentice standing in the center, holding a bright red hydrangea in his hand. He was stunned for a moment, and soon threw the hydrangea away and squeezed out with all his strength. However, it was useless for him to throw the hydrangea away. A group of rough men suddenly rushed down from the stage, grabbed Shen San in a few seconds, and carried him to the stage like prey. The rich man looked at Shen San's appearance, and his face seemed a little unhappy, but he finally held it back. "You are the one who caught my son's hydrangea." He touched his goatee with one hand and put his other hand behind his back. "No, it was a misunderstanding just now," Shen San answered quickly. The rich man was choked and became even more unhappy with the person in front of him. If his daughter hadn't secretly taken a look on the second floor and insisted on this man, he would not like such a son-in-law. Not only does he speak badly, but he also looks attractive. Misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? I clearly saw you catch the bouquet. The rich man blew his beard and glared. Sorry, when I was passing by just now, the bouquet accidentally hit me. Later, didn't the bouquet go to someone else? Shen San glanced at the crowd, but he couldn't find his master anymore. He couldn't help but have a headache and said sincerely. The rich man was so angry that he was shaking. Ever since he said that he wanted to marry his precious daughter, who in the town didn't want to come and dream of being his son-in-law. But this person, he took the initiative to give him a way out, but he not only didn't appreciate it, but also said something choking. The rich man became more and more dissatisfied. After thinking about it, he was ready to wave his hand to let the servants throw this man out. However, the rich lady sitting on the second floor noticed the rich man's gesture and immediately sent her personal maid down to stop him. The rich man looked at the maid who ran down and winked at him, gritted his teeth secretly, and forced out a sentence, "Keep the man and send him to the mansion." He wanted to throw the man in front of him thousands of kilometers away immediately, but his daughter was Alice. Shen San couldn't see Lu Yunxi, but she saw this scene clearly. Watching the rich man's house close the door and the crowd gradually dispersed, she jumped down from the tree and supported her forehead. What is this? That night, Shen San felt the breathing of the people guarding outside become smoother, and his eyes moved. Everyone outside was asleep. It's time to act. He exerted a little force with his hands and stretched out the rope that tied himself. Loosening his muscles and bones, he flashed and came to the rich man's yard. Shen San, a faint voice came from behind. He was startled, turned around and saw the master looking at her faintly. Master, let's go. I figured it out here. Lu Yunxi's expression was calm. She has become a Buddha. Life is full of surprises, and nothing can surprise her anymore. Shen San paused for a moment, and hurriedly followed. He carefully glanced at her face, feeling a little unsure. In the afternoon, the person who was said to be a rich lady came over and said some boring things to him. Did the master hear it? His heart began to beat uncomfortably. He didn't know why he was so uneasy, but he just couldn't help being a little flustered. Obviously, the rich lady came over and just said some words that she wanted him to stay, and she said it very subtly. Master, when did you come? He asked cautiously. Lu Yunxi stopped and looked at his evasive eyes, feeling puzzled. Why is he so guilty? Does he really want to stay and be someone's son-in-law? Chapter 100. Be my little lady. I've been here for a while. I walked around the whole mansion and came to find you. Lu Yunxi looked at her apprentice's face, her eyes flickered slightly. She asked tentatively, Chen San, what do you think of that rich lady? I think she is beautiful and gentle, and she is very good to you. Do you want to? She lowered her eyes and thought secretly. If the apprentice really likes the rich lady, then let him stay here. Otherwise, it would be useless to force him to follow you. Anyway, he's already level 80, and with a bonus of the sect suit, he doesn't need anyone to protect him at all. Shen San didn't know what she was thinking. He saw her with her hands on her chest, lowering her head and looking heavy. Although she was smiling when she talked to him, he suddenly felt a great sense of uneasiness in his heart. Inexplicable fear surged in his heart, and he subconsciously explained, Master, it's not what you think. I don't think she is very good. No one can compare to you. Master, you are the best. Lu Yunxi, who thought she would hear her apprentice asking her for a wedding leave, was caught off guard by her apprentice's compliment. She paused for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. After confirming again and again that her apprentice did not fancy the rich lady, she took him away from the town. Fortunately, although there were many unexpected situations in the front, the road was smooth all the way. The two finally arrived in Huzhou. Huzhou is a city with many connections. In this city, there are many large and small lakes. Many houses are even built on the lakes, with willows and small bridges. Walking in such an environment, Lu Yunxi and Shen San relaxed with the people around them. However, when they walked to the streets in the center of the city, the whole quiet and gentle water town atmosphere changed completely, as if they had suddenly entered a busy city. In the passing in, the sound of smashing tables and chairs, the sound of wine jugs colliding, and the sound of people talking and laughing loudly were intertwined. The two paused, looked at the inn next to them which was almost full of people from the martial arts world, and then looked at the fisherman's inn a little further away which was crowded but no one was making trouble, and walked towards the inn next to them in unison. Waiter, bring up all the good wine and food here. Shen San pretended to be a martial arts person, and put the giant sword on the table with a sound like thunder. Lu Yunxi sat on the side, wearing a long red silk dress, which made her face even wider and more charming, as if she was just a pendant of Shen San, and looked harmless. The martial arts people around noticed the two of them, and their eyes flickered. That man is a master, and his footsteps were so light when he walked in that you could hardly hear a sound. Some people regarded Shen San as a great enemy at first sight. She is a beautiful girl, but I don't know how she is in bed. There were also many obscene eyes sweeping over Lu Yunxi's curvy figure. Before the food came up, a man with dark circles under his eyes and a thin figure, who was obviously overindulgent, approached with a fan. He looked Shen San up and down, and then his eyes revealed a hint of contempt. Girl, what's the point of following this rough guy? You'd better follow me. I'm the disciple of the head of the evil killing sect. If you follow me, you will be the head disciple's little wife in the future. How about it? Lu Yunxi lowered her eyes, looked at the fan that was resting on her chin and slightly raised her head, and looked at the man opposite with a subtle look in her eyes. Little wife, she raised her hand and gestured to Shen San not to do it, and then turned her eyes back to the person in front of her. The young man frowned. Could it be that you still want to be the main wife? No, the main wife must be given to people from other sects. It's good for you to be the little wife. I don't like the main wife. You will be the most favored. What is the evil killing sect? She ignored these boring words and suddenly asked again. Evil killing sect? Our evil killing sect is a very famous sect. As long as you follow me, you can join the sect in the future. The man threw away his fan, looking romantic. My master is about to break through to the advanced level, and he's not comparable to those guys who have just entered the intermediate level. With a master who can rival the advanced level, you don't have to worry about the safety of your family in the future. You can let the whole family move into our sect. The young master raised his eyebrows, with a dissolute and proud look on his face. How about it? Are you tempted, Lu Yunxi? A master who is about to break through to the grandmaster level, is not so arrogant, but this guy. But, it turns out that there are still such weak sects. The head of the sect is only at the intermediate level. Even if he is about to reach the advanced level, he is still very weak. The palace master and elders in their Yanyu palace are all grandmasters. She asked a few more questions, and when she saw that she could not get any information from this person, she winked at the apprentice beside her. Shen San let go of the breath he had been holding, picked up the giant sword, and approached the man with a cold look in his eyes and a fake smile. Yunxi and Shensan sat in the audience, watching the people fighting fiercely on the stage, and each took a fruit from the small table beside them and started eating. Master, are we going to participate in the martial arts competition as well? Shensan glanced at the people around him and found that the level of the people nearby was very average. The competition is age-restricted, and only people under the age of 30 can participate. If the two of them participate, they will definitely win. Yunxi shook her head. I don't know if this is special in the water continent, or if she didn't pay close attention before. In addition to the big sects, there are many small sects. The heads of the sects are intermediate or advanced masters. Of course, there are also elementary ones. There are many small sects, distributed all over the place. Fortunately, she used to think that all sects were like the Misty Rain Palace, with advanced masters everywhere and masters as numerous as dogs. The martial arts competition held in Huzhou was just for the purpose of dividing treasures. When they first entered the water continent, they heard that someone in Huzhou was fighting for a treasure. However, the treasure, a blue-grade secret book, was found by everyone not long ago, but no one wanted to give it up. That's why there was a competition, and the first-place winner could get the secret book. The blue-grade secret book, she personally didn't think it was worth it. She was too lazy to learn it. And Shensan had limited skill slots. The one she learned before for keeping warm was enough to take up space, not to mention another such a lame book. Shensan, if you want to learn, you should find a way to join a larger sect. This blue-grade secret book is quite ordinary. She looked at the golden treasure chest on the stage and was a little speechless. Maybe the treasure chest is more valuable than the blue-grade secret book. If you want to join my sect, I can recommend you at that time. As long as you pass the test, you can join. Shensan nodded and looked at the tutorial post on the forum. Thank you, Master, but I still plan to join another sect to try first. The martial arts of that sect are more suitable for me. The forum lists several major sects that players are most likely to join, and also introduces the martial arts and characteristics that each sect is good at. He already had an idea in his mind, and was waiting to return to the forest continent to implement it. After the two exchanged a few words secretly, they quieted down again and watched the fight above quietly. At this time, the previous round of the game had just ended, and the new round of battle had just begun. Standing on the stage was a girl and the man who had said before that he wanted Yunxi to be his concubine. Little girl, you are pretty. This young master likes you. Do you want to follow me and go back to be my little wife? The man's words were still so familiar, almost the same as what he said to Yunxi before. The master and the apprentice couldn't help but twitch their eyes when they saw this scene. Could it be that this guy would ask every girl he saw? The girl in yellow clothes opposite had a childish look on her face, and she looked only about 10 years old. She puffed her lips angrily and glared at him. Don't fart here. Who wants to follow you? With someone like you, I can beat 10 of them by myself. The two couldn't reach an agreement, and the battle was about to break out. The girl in yellow used a ribbon, which had low attack power, but was very beautiful, and it was a pleasure to look at. The young man opposite used a fan, which had low attack power, but also looked a bit handsome. Is this a competition of who is prettier or who is stronger? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.